Welcome to Dracula by Bram Stoker. This audiobook is based on the original novel, but the text has been carefully adapted for English learners. The language is simpler and easier to follow, while the story, atmosphere, and main events remain true to the original. From time to time, the story will pause briefly to explain useful words and expressions. Chapter 1. On the 1st of May, I left Munich by train and traveled east. After Vienna, I reached Budapest, a beautiful city beside the wide river Danube. As the train crossed the river, I felt that I was leaving the familiar west and entering the mysterious east. That night, I stayed at a hotel in Klausenburg. For supper, I ate chicken cooked with red pepper, a local dish called paprika händel. It was delicious, although it made me very thirsty, and I reminded myself to get the recipe from Mina. Before leaving London, I had studied Transylvania in the British Museum. Count Dracula's home lay among the Carpathian Mountains, near the borders of Transylvania, Moldavia, and Bukovina. The region was one of the wildest and least known parts of Europe. Many different peoples lived there, and the area was full of old beliefs and frightening stories. I read that every superstition in the world seemed to meet in the Carpathians. This sounded interesting, though perhaps not completely comfortable for a visitor. The next train moved slowly through green hills, forests, villages, and rushing rivers. People wore colorful clothes, and the strangest were the Slovaks in their broad hats and white trousers. I wanted to remember everything clearly so I could describe the journey to Mina. A glimpse is a quick, short look. Jonathan caught a glimpse of Budapest from the train. A border is the line between two countries or regions. Dracula's home was close to 3 borders. A superstition is an old belief that certain actions or signs bring good or bad luck. People in the Carpathians had many superstitions about dangerous supernatural things. At sunset, I reached Bistritz and found the Golden Krone Hotel, just as Count Dracula had instructed me. The elderly owners welcomed me warmly and seemed to be expecting my arrival. The woman handed me a letter from the Count. "My friend, welcome to the Carpathians," the letter began. The Count explained that his carriage would wait for me tomorrow at the Borgo Pass. He hoped I had enjoyed a safe journey and that I would enjoy his beautiful land. The next morning, the hotel owner would not explain what frightened her. Instead, she asked if I truly had to visit the castle. When I said that important business was waiting, she became even more anxious. "Do you know what night this is?" she asked. It was the night before St. George's Day, when, according to local belief, evil things had their greatest power. At midnight, she said, every dangerous spirit in the world would be free. She fell to her knees and begged me to wait a day or two. I could not delay my business, so she placed a crucifix around my neck. I was not used to wearing such a thing, but her kindness and fear touched me deeply. When I climbed into the coach, a crowd gathered near the hotel door. They spoke quickly and pointed at me with worried faces. With my small dictionary, I recognized words such as devil, witch, vampire, and werewolf. Anxious means worried or nervous. The hotel owner was anxious about Jonathan's visit to the castle. To delay means to make something happen later. Jonathan said he could not delay his business. To beg means to ask for something with great emotion or urgency. The woman begged Jonathan not to travel on St. George's Eve. The coach rolled out of Bistritz, and the people made signs to protect me from evil. Some passengers gave me small gifts: a cross, garlic, a wild rose, and a branch from a mountain tree. Their fear began to make me uneasy. The road crossed a land of extraordinary beauty. Green hills rose around us, while dark forests covered the distant mountains. We passed farms with fruit trees and fields bright with flowers. As evening approached, the countryside became colder and darker. The driver hurried the horses, and the passengers watched the setting sun nervously. Every time we stopped, people asked the driver about me and looked at me with pity. At last we climbed into the Borgo Pass, where the Count's carriage was supposed to meet me. The road was empty, and the driver wanted to leave before the mysterious carriage arrived. Then we heard the quick sound of horses coming through the darkness. A carriage drawn by 4 powerful black horses stopped beside us. Its driver was a tall man with a long brown beard and a large black hat that hid most of his face. His eyes appeared red in the lamplight. The 2 drivers argued about the time, but the stranger spoke with quiet confidence. He lifted my heavy bag with one hand, as if it weighed almost nothing. When he took my arm to help me down, his grip felt as strong as metal. Uneasy means slightly worried or uncomfortable. The passenger's fear made Jonathan feel uneasy. Pity is sadness for another person's trouble. The villagers looked at Jonathan with pity. A grip is the way someone holds something firmly. The unknown driver's grip was so powerful that it felt like metal. The other coach disappeared, and I sat alone behind the silent stranger. His carriage traveled quickly through a cold night filled with the howling of wolves. The sound seemed to come closer from every side. After some time, I noticed that we were passing the same places again and again. The driver was taking us around in a wide circle while the minutes moved toward midnight. At the distant sound of a dog, the horses began to shake. A nearby clock struck midnight, and dogs and wolves answered one another across the mountains. The horses jumped in terror, but the driver controlled them with only a few quiet words. We entered a narrow road with trees closing over us like a dark tunnel. From time to time, a small blue flame appeared beside the road. Whenever it appeared, the driver stopped, stepped down, and walked into the darkness. Once he stood so close to the flame that it seemed to shine through his body. At one place, he built a small wall of stones around the flame. I leaned from the carriage to watch him, but I lost my balance and almost fell. When I looked again, the flame had vanished and the driver was already returning. Suddenly the moon appeared from behind the clouds, and I saw a ring of wolves around the carriage. Their white teeth, red tongues, and silent bodies were more terrible than their howling. Fear froze me in my seat. The horses reared and tried to escape, but the wolves surrounded them on every side. I shouted for the driver and struck the side of the carriage to frighten the animals away. Then the stranger appeared in the road. He raised his long arms and spoke in a commanding voice. The wolves immediately moved backward, as if an invisible force were pushing them away. A cloud crossed the moon, and everything became dark again. To surround means to be on every side of something. The wolves surrounded the carriage. To vanish means to disappear suddenly. The blue flame vanished when Jonathan looked away. A command is a strong order that must be obeyed. The wolves moved away when the strange driver gave a command. When the moon returned, the wolves were gone and the driver was climbing back into his seat. I was too frightened to speak or move. The carriage continued upward through almost complete darkness. At last the horses stopped inside the courtyard of a vast ruined castle. No light came from its tall black windows. Broken walls made a jagged line against the moonlit sky. Jonathan Harker has reached Castle Dracula, but no servant has come to welcome him. Who was the driver, and how could he control the wolves? The answers wait beyond the castle door. Review today's words: glimpse, superstition, anxious, grip, surround, vanish, and command. Why do you think the hotel owner was so afraid? Write your answer in the comments. Continue with Chapter 2 to enter Castle Dracula. Chapter 2. Jonathan Harker arrives at Dracula's castle in the Carpathians. He is tired and confused. The castle is dark and mysterious, with many old stone arches and doors. A strong driver helps Harker get off the carriage. His hands are very strong and cold. The driver carries Harker's bags and disappears into the dark. A tall old man opens the castle door. He is dressed all in black and holds a silver lamp. He welcomes Harker with a cold, strong handshake and says, "Welcome to my house." Dracula says, "Come freely, go safely, and leave something of the happiness you bring," as he shakes Harker's hand. The handshake is so cold and strong that Harker is surprised. Dracula leads Harker to a room with a table set for supper and a warm fire. The room is large and well lit, with a big fireplace and a comfortable bed. Harker reads a letter from Mr. Hawkins, who sends him to work for Count Dracula. The letter says Dracula is buying a house in London and needs help. Harker eats a good supper of chicken, cheese, and wine. Dracula asks many questions about Harker's journey and listens carefully. Pale skin means very light-colored skin. Example: the vampire has pale skin and no blood in his face. Sharp teeth means very pointed and dangerous teeth. Example: the wolf has sharp teeth and can bite through metal. Harker looks closely at Dracula and notices his pale skin and sharp teeth. Dracula's hands are pale and have long, sharp nails. Dracula's hands are described as coarse-broad, with squat fingers. Strange to say, there were hairs in the center of the palm. His nails are long and fine, cut to a sharp point. Dracula says, "Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make, as wolves howl outside." Harker feels uneasy and notices Dracula's eyes glow in the firelight. Dracula tells Harker to rest and says he will return in the afternoon. Harker goes to his bedroom and feels more relaxed after the meal. Dracula says, "I have to be away till the afternoon, so sleep well and dream well," before leaving Harker. Harker is left alone in his room, unsure of what to expect. The next morning, Harker finds a cold breakfast and a note from Dracula. The note says, "I have to be absent for a while. Do not wait for me." Harker notices there are no mirrors in the castle and no servants. He uses a small mirror from his bag to shave and brush his hair. Blue flames means fire that is blue in color. Example: the fire in the fireplace is blue flames and burns very hot. Treasure hidden means valuable things that are kept secret. Example: the treasure hidden in the cave is gold and jewels. Harker finds a library with many English books, newspapers, and maps. He is surprised to see books about London, Exeter, and Whitby. Dracula enters the library and talks about his love for England. He says he wants to learn English and speak it like a native. Dracula says, "I am glad you found your way in here, for I am sure there is much that will interest you." He lays his hand on some of the books and speaks of their importance to him. Dracula explains that blue flames appear over treasure hidden in the region. He says people are too afraid to look for it at night. Dracula and Harker discuss the estate in London that Dracula plans to buy. Harker shows Dracula maps and papers about the house at Carfax. Harker gives Dracula detailed notes about the old house at Carfax. The house is surrounded by a high wall and has a chapel nearby. Dracula says he prefers old, grand houses and dislikes modern life. He mentions he is a noble from Transylvania and wants to live in a castle. Foul bauble means a bad or dirty object. Example: the mirror is a foul bauble that Dracula hates. Man's vanity means pride in one's appearance. Example: people use mirrors for man's vanity to look good. Dracula says, "I am glad that it is old and big. I myself am of an old family, and to live in a new house would kill me." He speaks of his deep connection to the past and his aversion to modernity. Harker finds a map in the library with London, Exeter, and Whitby marked. He wonders why Dracula is interested in these places. Dracula returns and invites Harker to supper, which he eats alone. Harker notices Dracula does not eat or drink anything. While shaving, Harker feels a hand on his shoulder. It is Dracula. Harker is shocked because he does not see Dracula in the mirror. Dracula destroys the mirror, saying it is a foul bauble of man's vanity. He throws the mirror out the window and leaves without a word. Harker eats breakfast alone and notices Dracula has not eaten or drunk anything. He feels uneasy and wonders why Dracula does not need food. Harker explores the castle and finds many locked doors and no exits. He realizes the castle is like a prison and he's trapped inside. Locked doors means doors that cannot be opened. Example: the castle has locked doors and no one can leave. No exits means there is nowhere to go. Example: the room has no exits and is very dark. Harker concludes the castle is a prison and he is a prisoner inside. He feels scared and unsure about what will happen next. Harker feels uneasy and isolated in the castle. He is afraid of Dracula. He is unsure if Dracula is human or something else. Harker notices the castle is very quiet and has no servants. He feels alone and is afraid of what might happen at night. Harker remembers the driver and Dracula both had very cold hands. He is unable to find a mirror and uses a small one from his bag. Jonathan Harker arrives at Dracula's castle and meets the mysterious Count. He feels uneasy and notices strange things about the castle and Dracula. What does Dracula say about the blue flames and treasure in the region? The next chapter begins with Harker exploring the castle and discovering more strange and unsettling things about Dracula. Chapter 3. Jonathan Harker realizes he is a prisoner in the castle. He feels like a rat in a trap. He tries every door and window, but finds no escape. Harker feels helpless and decides to keep his fears to himself. He knows the Count is watching and will not trust him. Harker hears the Count return and sees him making the bed. This confirms there are no servants in the castle. Harker is frightened by the thought that the Count may have driven the coach. He wonders how the Count controls the wolves and people. Harker asks the Count about Transylvanian history. The Count speaks with pride about his family's legacy. The Count tells the story of the Sikeles and the Dracula bloodline. He claims his family has a proud and powerful history. The Count asks Harker about legal matters and multiple solicitors. He wants to know how business is handled in England. Impress means to make someone believe something is important. Example: the Count impressed Harker with his knowledge. Warn means to tell someone about a danger. Example: the Count warned Harker not to sleep elsewhere. Harker explains the legal system to the Count. The Count shows great knowledge and impresses Harker. The Count insists Harker stay for a month and warns him not to write about anything else. Harker feels trapped and must obey. Harker writes 2 letters, one to Mr. Peter Hawkins and one to Mina. He uses shorthand to hide the second letter from a Count. Harker notices the Count reading the letters and realizes the Count can read them. He feels even more trapped and afraid. The Count stamps the letters and warns Harker not to sleep elsewhere in the castle. He says the castle has bad dreams for those who sleep unwisely. Harker places the crucifix over his bed for protection. He hopes it will help him sleep without nightmares. Harker explores the castle and finds a locked door that he eventually forces open. He is determined to find a way out. Explore means to look around carefully. Example: Harker explored the castle to find a way out. First means to push or pull something hard. Example: Harker forced the door open to enter the new wing. Harker discovers a wing of the castle that appears to have been used by the Count's female relatives. The rooms are old and full of dust. Harker feels a sense of peace in the old wing of the castle. It is a contrast to the fear he feels in the Count's presence. Harker decides to sleep in the old wing, ignoring the Count's warning. He feels safer here than in the Count's rooms. Harker falls asleep and experiences a vivid, terrifying dream involving 3 women. He is unsure if it was real or just a dream. In the dream, the women approach Harker with a mix of allure and menace. They whisper and laugh in a strange, unnatural way. The fair woman leans over Harker, showing signs of vampiric behavior. She licks her lips and tries to bite him. The Count appears in the dream, furious at the women's actions. He intervenes to stop them and warns them. Intervene means to step in to stop something. Example: the Count intervened to stop the women. Threaten means to say you will do something bad. Example: the Count threatened the women if they meddled. The Count warns the women that Harker belongs to him and threatens them. He says they will have to deal with him if they meddle. The women laugh mockingly at the Count, suggesting he is never loved. They challenge his authority and power. The Count promises the women they will have Harker later and send him away. He says he will awaken Harker for work. The women vanish, and Harker is left in a state of shock and unconsciousness. He wakes up the next morning, unsure if it was real. Harker wakes up the next morning, unsure whether his experience was real or a dream. He feels deeply disturbed and confused. Harker is deeply disturbed by the dream and begins to question his own sanity. He reflects on the Count's warning and feels a growing fear of the Count's power over him. Disturb means to make someone feel uneasy. Example: the dream disturbed Harker deeply. Sanity means being mentally healthy. Example: Harker began to question his own sanity. Jonathan Harker is trapped in the castle and has terrifying dreams about the Count and strange women. What does Harker think the Count's warning about sleeping elsewhere means? The next chapter begins with Harker still in the castle, trying to find a way to escape. Chapter 4. Jonathan wakes in his bed, unsure if the Count moved him or if it was a dream. He feels confused but notices small signs that something strange happened. His clothes are neatly folded, and his watch is unwound, which is unusual for him. These details make him wonder if the Count was involved. He thinks the Count must have moved him quickly, as his pockets and diary are still intact. This makes him feel more certain about what happened. He remembers the terrifying presence of the 3 women in the castle. He feels safer in his room now, even though it is scary. On May 18th, he goes to the locked room at the top of the stairs and finds it closed from the inside. He is sure now that the Count is hiding something. The door is splintered and locked from the inside, which makes him more suspicious. He feels that the Count is keeping a secret. On May 19th, the Count asks him to write 3 letters with specific dates: June 12th, June 19th, and June 29th. Harker realizes these dates mark the time he is left to live. Suspicion means a feeling that someone is guilty or has done something wrong. Example: I had a suspicion that the Count was hiding something. Villainy means evil or wicked actions. Example: the Count's plan was full of villainy. He is terrified and feels that his life is now counted down. He is determined to find a way to escape. On May 28th, a group of Skaney, gypsies, arrive at the castle. Harker tries to talk to them through his window. He writes letters to his friends, including Mina, and tries to get the Skaney to post them. He hopes they will reach his friends safely. He throws the letters through his window with a gold piece, and the Skaney man accepts them. He feels a small hope that help is coming. The Count finds the letters, burns one to Mina, and returns the other to Harker. Harker is shocked and feels even more trapped. The Count locks Harker in his room again, and Harker is left in despair. He feels completely powerless. On May 31st, Harker finds that all his paper, notes, and personal items have been taken. He realizes the Count is planning something new. Despair means a feeling of hopelessness. Example: Harker felt despair when he realized he was trapped. Superstition means a belief in magic or the supernatural. Example: the Skaney believed in superstition. He suspects the Count is trying to trap him even more, and he feels more desperate. He is determined to find a way out. On June 17th, Harker sees 2 lighter wagons arrive with Slovaks, but the Skaney refuse to help him. He feels even more alone. He watches the wagons unload boxes, which are later nailed shut. He suspects the Count is hiding something dangerous. On June 24th, Harker sees the Count leave his room in Harker's clothes, carrying a bag. He realizes the Count is trying to frame him. He sees strange motes of dust in the moonlight, which seem to move strangely. He feels a strange calm as he watches them. He is hypnotized by the motes and sees the ghostly women, which terrifies him. He runs back to his room in fear. He hears a woman crying in the courtyard, begging for her child. He realizes the Count has taken the child. Hypnotized means to be in a trance or unable to think clearly. Example: Harker was hypnotized by the motes of dust. Revelation means a sudden discovery or understanding. Example: the revelation of the Count's plan shocked Harker. A pack of wolves is summoned by the Count, and the woman is left alone. Harker feels pity but also fear. On June 25th, Harker decides to take action during the day, as he feels the Count is vulnerable. He is determined to find a way to escape. He decides to enter the Count's room through the window, imitating the Count's escape. He is risking his life, but feels it is the only way. He enters the Count's room and finds a room filled with gold and old treasures. He is shocked by the Count's wealth. He finds a heavy door leading to a stone passage in an old ruined chapel. He feels a sense of dread as he enters. In the chapel, he finds a box containing the Count, who appears to be in a death-like state. He is terrified and runs back to his room. He returns to his room, shaken by the discovery, and tries to think of a plan. He is determined to escape. Paralyzed means to make someone unable to move. Example: the Count's eyes paralyzed Harker. Desperation means a feeling of extreme hopelessness. Example: Harker felt desperation when he could not escape. On June 29th, the Count announces that Harker will leave the next day, but Harker suspects a trick. He is not sure if the Count is telling the truth. The Count leads Harker to the door, where wolves are waiting, and Harker refuses to leave. He is determined to stay and fight. The Count locks Harker in his room again, and Harker hears the Count's whisper promising to return the next night. He feels even more trapped. On June 30th, Harker awakens and tries to escape, but the door is locked from the outside. He is completely trapped and feels desperate. He climbs back to the Count's room and finds the Count's body in the box, now seemingly rejuvenated. He is shocked and feels even more fear. He attacks the Count's body with a shovel, but the Count's eyes paralyze him. He is unable to move and feels helpless. He hears the Skaney and Slovaks arriving, and the box is being nailed shut. He realizes the Count is still alive and dangerous. Harker resolves to escape by scaling the castle wall, taking some gold with him, and fleeing to England. He is determined to survive no matter what. Jonathan Harker is trapped in the castle, but he is determined to escape and find help. What does Harker plan to do after he sees the Count's body in the box? The next chapter begins with Mina reading Harker's journal and realizing the danger he is in. Chapter 5. Miss Mina writes to Lucy on May 9th, saying she is busy with work and shorthand. She is excited about Jonathan's return from Transylvania in a week. Mina plans to keep a journal like Jonathan's to write about her life and thoughts. She hopes to share it with Jonathan someday. Mina received a short letter from Jonathan in Transylvania, and he is coming back soon. She is looking forward to seeing him. Lucy writes to Mina on Wednesday, saying she is not a bad correspondent. She mentions a tall, curly-haired man named Mr. Holmwood. Lucy describes Mr. Holmwood as a doctor, rich and of good birth. He looks people in the eye as if reading their thoughts. Lucy says Mr. Holmwood would be a good match for Mina if she were not engaged. He is a kind and strong man. Lucy admits she loves Arthur Holmwood, though he has not said it yet. She is very emotional and writes with tears. Correspondent means a person who writes letters. Example: Lucy is a good correspondent. Engaged means promised to marry. Example: Mina is engaged to Jonathan. Lucy writes to Mina on May 24th, saying she received 3 proposals in one day. She's confused and emotional about it. Dr. Seward proposed to Lucy, but he was nervous and awkward. He asked if she loved someone else, and she said yes. Lucy told Dr. Seward she loved someone else, but did not name Jonathan. He left and seemed very sad. Quincy Morris proposed to Lucy, speaking in American slang. He was young, jolly, and very kind. Quincy asked Lucy if she loved someone else, and she said yes. He was noble and respectful of her honesty. Lucy received a 3rd proposal, and she is very happy about it. She does not say who it is, but it is emotional. Lucy writes a postscript, hinting the 3rd proposal is from Arthur Holmwood. She is excited and emotional about it. Proposal means a request to marry. Example: Quincy made a proposal to Lucy. Noble means very kind and brave. Example: Quincy was a noble man. Dr. Seward writes in his diary on May 25th, feeling sad after being rejected. He says he cannot eat or rest. Seward is studying a patient named R.M. Renfield, who is strange and interesting. He wants to understand his madness. Seward thinks about the balance between self-interest and duty. He is trying to understand Renfield's mind. Quincy Morris writes to Arthur Holmwood, inviting him to a gathering. They will celebrate Lucy's engagement. Quincy says Jack Seward will be at the gathering, and they will drink to Lucy's happiness. They're all friends. Arthur Holmwood replies to Quincy, saying he will come to the gathering. He is excited and eager to attend. Lucy is confused about the proposals, especially from Dr. Seward. She feels emotional and conflicted. Conflicted means confused and unsure. Example: Lucy was conflicted about the proposals. Honesty means being truthful. Example: Lucy was honest with Quincy. Lucy describes Quincy's proposal and his noble response to her honesty. He was kind and respectful. Lucy's postscript hints the 3rd proposal is from Arthur Holmwood. She is very happy and emotional. Seward writes in Latin and reflects on madness and duty. He is trying to understand Renfield's mind. Quincy's letter to Arthur mentions past adventures and a sense of friendship. They are close and trust each other. Arthur's telegram to Quincy is short and enthusiastic. He is excited about the gathering. Lucy's letter is full of tears and blots, showing her emotional state. She is overwhelmed by the proposals. Lucy's letter ends with her being very happy about the 3rd proposal. She is grateful and emotional. Emotional means showing strong feelings. Example: Lucy was very emotional in her letter. Grateful means thankful. Example: Lucy was grateful for the proposal. In this chapter, Mina and Lucy exchange letters, and Lucy receives 3 proposals in one day. Who is the 3rd man who proposed to Lucy? Next, Dr. Seward continues his study of Renfield, and Arthur Holmwood prepares for the gathering. Chapter 6. Mina arrives in Whitby and is greeted by Lucy at the station. Lucy looks very happy to see her. They drive to the house at the Crescent where they will stay. Mina describes the beautiful scenery of Whitby, including the Esk River and the viaduct. She mentions the old town and the ruins of Whitby Abbey. Mina talks about the churchyard and the view of the harbor from there. She finds the place very peaceful and writes in her journal. Mina meets an old man named Mr. Swales who sits with her and talks about the town. He is very old and has a lot of stories to tell. Mr. Swales says the legends about the White Lady and the bells at sea are not true. He thinks they're just stories for tourists. Mina and Lucy sit by a tombstone in the churchyard and talk with Mr. Swales. He says the tombstone is full of lies. Mr. Swales tells the story of George Cannon, who died by falling from the rocks. He says George committed suicide and his mother made the tombstone. Tombstone means a stone with a name on it. Example: the tombstone says, "Here lies John." Legend means a story from the past. Example: the legend says a ghost lives here. Lucy is upset by the story and says she cannot sit on the tombstone anymore. She feels uncomfortable about the situation. Mina and Lucy sit together and talk about Lucy's upcoming marriage to Arthur Holmwood. They are both happy about the future. Mina feels sad and lonely after Lucy leaves. She misses Jonathan and is worried about him. Dr. Seward writes about Renfield's strange habit of collecting animals like flies and spiders. Renfield keeps them in boxes and feeds them. Renfield asks Dr. Seward for a kitten, but he refuses. Renfield becomes very upset and angry. Dr. Seward visits Renfield again and finds him sitting alone and very sad. Renfield is desperate for a cat to take care of. Renfield starts collecting sugar and flies again, showing he is returning to his old habits. He seems to be preparing for something. Suicide means to kill yourself. Example: he committed suicide because he was very sad. Tomb means a place where a body is buried. Example: the tomb is in the churchyard. Dr. Seward finds feathers and a drop of blood in Renfield's room. He suspects Renfield may have eaten his birds. The attendant tells Dr. Seward that Renfield has been sick and has thrown up feathers. This makes Dr. Seward think Renfield ate his birds. Dr. Seward gives Renfield an opiate and reads his notes. He realizes Renfield is a maniac who wants to absorb life. Dr. Seward thinks studying Renfield's mind could help science. He feels Renfield is a special case. Mina writes in her journal about her worries for Jonathan and Lucy's sleepwalking. She feels very anxious and lonely. Mina receives a letter from Jonathan through Mr. Hawkins, but it is very short. She is not satisfied with the message. Lucy walks in her sleep more often, and Mina locks the door each night. She is worried about Lucy's safety. Maniac means someone who is very crazy. Example: he is a dangerous maniac. Habit means something you do often. Example: he has a habit of eating spiders. Mr. Holmwood is called away to see his father, making Lucy feel anxious. She is looking forward to meeting him. Mina continues to worry about Jonathan and feels more alone. She is waiting for news from him. Mina notices Lucy is more excitable and seems to watch her even in her sleep. This makes Mina feel uneasy. Mina describes the dark, stormy weather and the strange ship in the distance. She feels something bad is coming. Old Mr. Swales approaches Mina and apologizes for his earlier words about death. He says he was wrong to be so harsh. Mr. Swales says he is afraid of death and thinks the storm may bring disaster. He feels the wind is full of bad omens. The Coast Guard tells Mina about a strange Russian ship that is acting strangely. It seems lost in the storm. Storm means a big wind and rain. Example, the storm made the sea very rough. Foreboding means a feeling that something bad will happen. Example, she felt a foreboding in the air. Mina is deeply moved by Mr. Swale's change in attitude and his final blessing. She feels touched by his kindness. This chapter shows Mina's arrival in Whitby, her conversations with Mr. Swales, and Dr. Seward's observations of Renfield. The atmosphere is dark and mysterious. What does Mr. Swales say about the tombstones in the churchyard? The next chapter will begin with Mina continuing to worry about Jonathan and the strange Russian ship approaching the shore. Chapter 7. A sudden and violent storm hits Whitby on August 8th. The weather was unusually calm before the storm began. The storm begins with unusual weather signs, including Mares tails in the sky. The wind was blowing from the southwest, but it was light. The storm causes a dead calm at midnight, followed by a strange, hollow, booming sound. The silence was so marked that even the barking of a dog could be heard. The storm breaks suddenly, with waves rising rapidly and the sea becoming a roaring and devouring monster. The wind roared like thunder, and the sea crashed against the cliffs. A foreign schooner is seen sailing westward despite the danger, with crew members warning her to reduce sail. The schooner was going westward, and the crew warned her to lower her sails. The schooner is later seen in the storm, with all sails set, and appears to be in grave danger. The wind had shifted, and the schooner was heading directly toward the reef. A massive sea fog rolls in, making visibility nearly impossible and increasing the danger for those on the cliffs. The fog was so thick that it seemed to close in on all things like a gray pall. Hollow means a sound that is deep and empty. Example, the sound of the waves was hollow and deep. Booming means a loud and deep sound. Example, the voice of the captain was booming and clear. The schooner is discovered by the searchlight, and it is revealed that the ship is heading directly toward the reef. The searchlight was used to find the schooner as it approached the reef. The wind shifts, and the schooner miraculously navigates through the storm and into the harbor. The wind shifted to the northeast, and the schooner was swept into the harbor. The schooner crashes on a Tate Hill pier, and a dead man is found lashed to the wheel with a crucifix and beads. The dead man was tied to the wheel with a crucifix and beads, and his hands were cut. A large dog jumps from the schooner and disappears into the darkness. The dog jumped from the bow of the ship and ran toward the cliff. The Coast Guard is the first to board the schooner and is visibly shocked by the sight of the dead man. The Coast Guard was the first to climb on board and saw the dead man tied to the wheel. The dead man is identified as having been dead for 2 days, and a bottle with a logbook is found in his pocket. The man had been dead for 2 days, and a bottle with a logbook was found in his pocket. The schooner is identified as the Russian ship _Demeter_, carrying silver sand and wooden boxes filled with mold. The ship was a Russian vessel called the _Demeter_, carrying silver sand and wooden boxes. Schooner means a type of ship with a single mast. Example, a schooner is a type of ship used for sailing. Logbook means a record of events. Example, the captain kept a logbook of the voyage. The ship's logbook is examined, revealing a series of strange and ominous events during the voyage. The logbook showed that strange things were happening on the ship. The logbook notes that the crew began to disappear one by one, with no clear explanation. The logbook said that the crew members were disappearing one by one. A crew member claims to have seen a tall, thin man on the ship, which causes fear and panic among the crew. A crew member said he saw a tall, thin man on the ship, and the crew became scared. A thorough search of the ship is conducted, but no one is found hiding, and the crew is temporarily relieved. The crew searched the ship, but found no one hiding, and they were relieved. The ship encounters rough weather in the Bay of Biscay, and more crew members disappear. The ship had rough weather in the Bay of Biscay, and more crew members disappeared. The ship is in the North Sea, and the captain and mate are the only ones left to operate the ship. The ship was in the North Sea, and only the captain and mate were left to work the ship. The mate claims to have seen a tall, thin, pale figure on the ship and becomes increasingly unhinged. The mate said he saw a tall, thin, pale figure on the ship, and he became very upset. Unhinged means not in control of one's mind. Example: the man was unhinged and acting strangely. Figure means a person or shape. Example: the captain saw a strange figure on the ship. The mate goes below deck and is later seen coming up in a state of madness, claiming the figure is in the hold. The mate went below deck and came up in a state of madness, saying the figure was in the hold. The mate jumps overboard in a fit of terror, and the captain is left alone to steer the ship. The mate jumped overboard in a fit of terror, and the captain was left alone to steer the ship. The captain writes in the logbook that he will tie himself to the wheel and face whatever is on the ship. The captain wrote that he would tie himself to the wheel and face whatever was on the ship. The ship arrives in Whitby, and the dead captain is found tied to the wheel with a crucifix and beads. The ship arrived in Whit, and the dead captain was found tied to the wheel with a crucifix and beads. The ship is examined by officials, and a logbook is produced at the inquest. The ship was examined by officials, and a logbook was produced at the inquest. The inquest concludes that the captain may have been driven mad by the events on the ship. The inquest said the captain may have been driven mad by the events on the ship. The ship is declared a 9 days wonder, and the dead captain is to be given a public funeral. The ship was declared a 9 days wonder, and the dead captain was to be given a public funeral. 9 days wonder means a surprising event that lasts for a short time. Example: the ship was a 9 days wonder in the town. Public funeral means a funeral attended by many people. Example: the captain was given a public funeral. The storm brought a dead man to Whitby, and the ship's logbook revealed strange events. What happened to the crew of the _Demeter_? The captain is to be given a public funeral, and the town is left with a sense of mystery. Chapter 8. Mina writes about a pleasant walk with Lucy, including a frightening encounter with wild bulls. Lucy was in good spirits, but they were scared by wild bulls and had to rest often. Mina writes about a sleepless night, fearing Lucy has gone out. She felt a strange emptiness and feared Lucy had left the house. Mina searches for Lucy, finds her asleep in the churchyard, and brings her home. She found Lucy alone in the churchyard and wrapped her in a warm shawl. Mina writes about Lucy's recovery and her return to normal behavior. Lucy seemed better and more cheerful, and Mina felt hopeful. Mina writes about a quiet day with Lucy, who seems to be recovering. They had a peaceful day, and Lucy slept well. Mina writes about a night when Lucy tries to get out of bed twice. Lucy tried to leave her bed twice, but Mina kept her safe. Mina writes about a night when she sees a bat flying near the moonlight. She saw a large bat flying in the moonlight, which made her feel uneasy. Sleepwalk means to walk while still asleep. Example: Lucy begins to sleepwalk at night. Uneasy means worried or uncomfortable. Example: Mina feels uneasy when Lucy disappears. Mina writes about a day on the East Cliff where Lucy remarks about his red eyes again and a dark figure. Lucy mentioned his red eyes again and saw a dark figure near their seat. Mina writes about seeing a bird-like figure by Lucy's window at night. She saw something like a bird near Lucy's window, which made her worried. Mina writes about a day when Lucy confides in her about her mother's illness and her impending death. Lucy told Mina about her mother's illness and how she might die soon. Mina writes about a period of 2 days without writing due to a sense of shadowy pall over their happiness. She felt a dark cloud over their happiness and didn't write for 2 days. Mina writes about Lucy's worsening condition, including her fainting and the appearance of wounds on her throat. Lucy was getting weaker, and Mina found small wounds on her throat. A letter is sent from Samuel F. Billington and Son to Messrs. Carter, Patterson and Company regarding the delivery of goods to Carfax. Samuel F. Billington and Son sent a letter about delivering goods to Carfax. A letter is sent from Messrs. Carter, Patterson and Company to Samuel F. Billington and Son acknowledging the delivery of goods. Messrs. Carter, Patterson and Company confirmed the delivery of goods to Carfax. A wound is an injury to the body. Example: Mina notices 2 small wounds on Lucy's throat. Recover means to become healthy again. Example: Lucy seems to recover after resting. Mina writes about a happy day with Lucy, who is recovering, and talks about her experience on the night she sleepwalked. Lucy was cheerful and shared her experience of sleepwalking with Mina. Mina writes about a day when she receives news of Jonathan Harker's illness and her plans to visit him. Mina learned Jonathan was ill and planned to visit him. A letter is sent from Sister Agatha to Miss Wilhelmina Murray, informing her of Jonathan Harker's condition and his delirium. Sister Agatha wrote to Mina about Jonathan's illness and his strange dreams. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about a sudden change in Renfield's behavior, indicating a possible religious mania. Dr. Seward noticed Renfield acting strangely, possibly due to religious mania. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about his visit to Renfield, who exhibits signs of religious mania and speaks of a master. Renfield spoke of a master and seemed to believe he was serving a higher power. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about his decision to avoid chloral and stay awake due to his thoughts of Lucy. Dr. Seward decided not to take chloral and stayed awake thinking of Lucy. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about Renfield's escape and the subsequent pursuit by Dr. Seward and the night watchman. Renfield escaped, and Dr. Seward and a night watchman chased him. A chapel is a small place for Christian worship. Example: Renfield runs toward the old chapel. Escape means to get away from a place. Example: Renfield escapes from the asylum grounds. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about finding Renfield near the chapel and hearing him speak to an unseen master. Dr. Seward found Renfield near the chapel and heard him speak to an unseen master. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about Renfield's violent outburst and his eventual capture. Renfield fought violently before being captured and restrained. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about Renfield's coherent speech and his anticipation of something coming. Renfield spoke clearly about something coming and seemed to be waiting for it. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about his decision to take notes and feel more at ease. Dr. Seward felt more at ease after writing about the events and his thoughts. Mina writes about Lucy's recovery and her return to normal behavior. Lucy was recovering and seemed to be back to her usual self. Mina writes about a day when Lucy confides in her about her mother's illness and her impending death. Lucy told Mina about her mother's illness and how she might die soon. Mina writes about a period of 2 days without writing due to a sense of shadowy pall over their happiness. She felt a dark cloud over their happiness and didn't write for 2 days. Delirium is a confused state caused by illness. Example: Jonathan speaks wildly during his delirium. Coherent means clear and logical. Example: Renfield suddenly becomes calm and coherent. Mina writes about Lucy's worsening condition, including her fainting and the appearance of wounds on her throat. Lucy was getting weaker, and Mina found small wounds on her throat. Mina writes about a day when she receives news of Jonathan Harker's illness and her plans to visit him. Mina learned Jonathan was ill and planned to visit him. Mina writes about a happy day with Lucy, who is recovering, and talks about her experience on the night she sleepwalked. Lucy was cheerful and shared her experience of sleepwalking with Mina. Mina writes about a day when she receives news of Jonathan Harker's illness and her plans to visit him. Mina learned Jonathan was ill and planned to visit him. Lucy grows weaker. Jonathan is found ill, and Renfield waits for a mysterious master. Who does Renfield believe is coming to him? In the next chapter, Mina reaches Jonathan while doctors investigate Lucy's strange illness. Chapter 9. Mina writes to Lucy from Budapest on August 24th. She says she arrived safely and is with Jonathan. Jonathan is very thin and weak. He doesn't remember what happened to him, and Mina is worried about him. Mina talks about how Jonathan's eyes look different and that he has lost his usual calmness. Sister Agatha says Jonathan raved about terrible things, but she won't tell Mina what they were. Mina finds Jonathan's notebook and wants to read it, but he tells her to leave it alone. Jonathan says he has a secret and wants to keep it from her, even though they are about to marry. Mina decides to keep the notebook and plans to marry Jonathan as soon as possible. She asks Sister Agatha to help her get the wedding arranged quickly. Sister Agatha says the chaplain has been sent for. Mina and Jonathan will be married in an hour. Mina is very nervous, but also very happy about the wedding. Mina and Jonathan are married. Jonathan gives her the notebook as a wedding gift. He tells her to keep it secret unless she has a duty to open it. Mina writes to Lucy, saying she is very happy and feels like a wife now. She hopes Lucy will be as happy as she is and that her life will be full of love. So means to close something tightly. Example, she sealed the letter with wax. Trust means to believe someone is honest. Example, I trust my friend to keep my secret. Lucy writes to Mina from Whitby on August 30th. She says she is getting better and is happy with Arthur. She mentions that Arthur is with her and they are planning to get married on September 28th. Lucy talks about how she feels better and is full of energy. She and Arthur are spending time together. She says she loves Arthur more than ever, even though he says the same thing. Dr. Seward writes in his diary on August 20th. He says Renfield is getting calmer and has strange behavior around the moon. Renfield says the attendants think he can hurt Dr. Seward, but he doesn't believe it. Dr. Seward notes that Renfield is calm and seems to be thinking about something important. He says Renfield is not dangerous and that he might be trying to tell them something. Dr. Seward decides to let Renfield out of his restraints for a few hours each day. He hopes this will help Renfield feel better and give him a clue about his condition. Dr. Seward writes on August 23rd. He says Renfield escaped again and is acting strangely. He is worried about Renfield's behavior and wants to find out what is causing it. Dr. Seward sees Renfield act strangely when he sees a bat. Renfield becomes calm after that. He thinks there might be something special about the bat and Renfield's reaction to it. Rave means to speak loudly and excitedly about something. Example, he raved about the new movie. Calm means to be quiet and not worried. Example, she calmed the crying baby. Lucy writes in her diary on August 24th. She says she feels very unhappy and has bad dreams. She is worried about her health and feels weak and tired. Lucy wants to sleep in her mother's room and is very weak. She feels like she is not getting enough air. She is worried about her health and is not sure what is wrong with her. Lucy writes on August 25th. She says she is getting worse and feels very pale and weak. Her throat hurts, and she's not sure if it is her lungs or something else. Arthur writes to Dr. Seward on August 31st. He says Lucy is very ill and not getting better. He wants Dr. Seward to examine Lucy and help her get better. Arthur sends a telegram to Dr. Seward on September 1st. He says his father is getting worse and needs help. He is very worried about his family and wants Dr. Seward to come quickly. Dr. Seward writes to Arthur on September 2nd. He says Lucy is not sick in a physical way, but is very weak. He thinks there might be something wrong with her mind and wants to consult Van Helsing. Dr. Seward talks about testing Lucy's blood and finding it normal. He decides to send for Van Helsing because he thinks there is something wrong with Lucy's mind. Analyze means to study something carefully. Example, the doctor analyzed the blood sample. Blood means the red liquid in our bodies. Example, he had a cut and lost some blood. Dr. Seward writes to Arthur on September 3rd. He says Van Helsing has arrived and examined Lucy. Van Helsing is very concerned and wants to find out what is wrong with Lucy. Dr. Seward describes Van Helsing's examination of Lucy. He says there is something wrong with her mind. Van Helsing is determined to find the cause of Lucy's illness. Dr. Seward writes in his diary on September 4th. He says Renfield is getting better but has strange behavior. He thinks there might be something about the sun that is affecting Renfield. Dr. Seward notes that Renfield is eating flies and seems happy again. He is still trying to understand what is causing Renfield's strange behavior. At midnight, Renfield suddenly becomes calm. Dr. Seward notices that the change happens as daylight disappears. The timing makes him wonder whether the sun controls part of Renfield's strange behavior. Seward studies Renfield's daily changes and compares them with sunrise and sunset. He suspects a connection, but he still cannot explain what power is affecting his patient. Between the 4th and the 6th of September, Seward sends Van Helsing several telegrams about Renfield and Lucy. Each message becomes more urgent as their conditions change in frightening ways. Suspect means to think something is true, but not sure. Example, I suspect he knows the secret. Urgent means something needs to be done quickly. Example, the message was urgent, so he called the doctor. On September 6th, Seward sends a final urgent telegram asking Van Helsing to return immediately. A terrible change has occurred, and Seward knows that he needs his old teacher's help. Mina marries Jonathan, and Lucy is still very ill. Both events are important for the story. What do you think is causing Lucy's illness? Next, Van Helsing will try to find out what is wrong with Lucy and Renfield. Chapter 10. Dr. Seward writes to Arthur Holmwood about Lucy's worsening condition and the arrival of Dr. Van Helsing. He tells Arthur that Lucy is not well and that Van Helsing will help her. Dr. Seward writes in his diary about Van Helsing's arrival and his warning about dealing with a madman. Van Helsing says that all men are mad in some way and that they must be careful with their knowledge. Van Helsing tells Dr. Seward that he will not reveal the full truth about Lucy's condition to Arthur. He says that Arthur should not know yet, but might one day. Van Helsing compares the situation to a farmer waiting for the corn to ripen. He says that they must wait for the right time to act, like a farmer waits for the corn to grow. Dr. Seward describes Lucy's worsening condition and Van Helsing's grave reaction. Lucy is pale and weak, and Van Helsing is very worried about her. Van Helsing suggests a blood transfusion and offers to give his own blood. He says that Lucy needs blood and that he will give it if needed. Arthur Holmwood arrives and is introduced to Van Helsing as Lucy's lover. Arthur is very worried and wants to help Lucy. Madmen means people who are not right in their minds. Example, the doctor said the patient was a madman. Knowledge means information or understanding. Example: the teacher gave us knowledge about the stars. Van Helsing encourages Arthur to give his blood for the transfusion. He says that Arthur is strong and that his blood would help Lucy. Van Helsing instructs Arthur to kiss Lucy before the transfusion and to leave immediately afterward. He says that Arthur must not stay and that he must leave at his sign. Van Helsing performs the blood transfusion with Arthur and Dr. Seward as donors. Arthur gives his blood, and Lucy begins to look better. Van Helsing notices a red mark on Lucy's throat and suspects something is wrong. He says that the mark is strange and that something is not right. Dr. Seward examines the mark and finds 2 small punctures on Lucy's neck. He says that the edges are worn and that it is not normal. Van Helsing suggests that Lucy's condition may be due to something other than illness. He says that they must find out what is causing her illness. Dr. Seward stays with Lucy overnight, and she sleeps peacefully. Lucy sleeps deeply and seems to be recovering. Transfusion means giving blood from one person to another. Example: the doctor did a transfusion to save the patient's life. Narcotic means a drug that makes you sleepy. Example: the nurse gave the patient a narcotic to help him sleep. Dr. Seward sends a telegram to Van Helsing and Arthur about the successful transfusion. He tells them that Lucy is getting better and that the operation was a success. Van Helsing arrives at Hillingham and suggests that Dr. Seward stay for the night. He says that they must watch Lucy closely and that they must not let anyone else know. Lucy Westerner writes in her diary about her improved condition and her feelings for Arthur. She says that she feels close to Arthur and that she is grateful for his love. Dr. Seward returns to Hillingham and finds Lucy in a worse condition. Lucy is pale and weak, and her condition has worsened. Van Helsing examines Lucy and is horrified by her condition. He says that Lucy is in a very bad state and that they must act quickly. Van Helsing and Dr. Seward perform another blood transfusion with Dr. Seward as the donor. Arthur is not involved this time, and Dr. Seward gives his blood to Lucy. Van Helsing gives Lucy a hypodermic injection of morphia to induce sleep. He says that Lucy needs to rest and that the injection will help her sleep. Hypodermic means a needle that goes under the skin. Example: the nurse used a hypodermic needle to give the medicine. Morphia means a drug that makes you sleepy. Example: the doctor gave the patient morphia to help him sleep. Van Helsing instructs Dr. Seward not to tell Arthur about the transfusion. He says that Arthur must not know and that it would be dangerous if he did. Dr. Seward is sent to rest and is told to eat and drink to recover. He is told to take care of himself and to rest for a while. Dr. Seward reflects on the strange punctures on Lucy's neck and the lack of blood loss. He is puzzled by the marks and the fact that there is no sign of blood loss. Van Helsing returns and instructs Dr. Seward to stay with Lucy. He says that they must watch her closely and that they must not let anyone else know. Van Helsing receives a parcel of white flowers from abroad and plans to use them for Lucy. He says that the flowers are medicinal and that they will help Lucy sleep. Van Helsing explains that the flowers are medicinal and will help Lucy sleep. He says that the flowers are like the lotus and that they will make her forget her troubles. Van Helsing decorates Lucy's room with garlic and instructs her not to open the windows or doors. He says that the garlic will help her sleep and that she must not open the windows or doors. Decorates means to make something look nice. Example: the artist decorated the room with flowers. Instruction means a direction or order. Example: the teacher gave us instructions on how to do the experiment. Lucy's condition improved after the transfusion, but she later worsened again, suggesting something supernatural is at play. Why did Van Helsing not tell Arthur about the transfusion? Van Helsing uses garlic to help Lucy sleep, and he is confident it will work. Chapter 11. On September 12th, Lucy writes that Van Helsing's garlic flowers make her feel safe. For the first time in many nights, she is not afraid to sleep or hear wings outside. The next morning, Lucy's mother proudly tells the doctors that she removed the strong-smelling flowers. She also opened the window because she believed the room needed fresh air. Van Helsing hides his horror until Mrs. Westenra leaves. Then he breaks down and weeps. Her loving mistake has removed Lucy's protection, but the doctors cannot frighten her sick heart with the truth. They find Lucy pale and weak again. Van Helsing prepares another blood transfusion immediately. This time Seward performs the operation, and Van Helsing gives his own blood. Color returns to Lucy's cheeks, and her breathing becomes steady. Van Helsing tells Mrs. Westenra never to change his treatment again. He stays to watch Lucy personally for several nights. By September 17th, Lucy has enjoyed 4 peaceful days. She feels stronger and no longer fears sleep. Garlic arrives daily from Harlem, and the frightening voices and flapping sounds have stopped. Protection means something that keeps a person safe. Example: garlic gives Lucy protection. A transfusion moves blood into another person's body. Example: Van Helsing gives Lucy a transfusion. Van Helsing must travel to Amsterdam for 1 day. Lucy believes she is strong enough to remain without him. She does not know that danger is waiting outside her window. A newspaper reports that a wolf named Berserker escaped from the London Zoo. The keeper says a tall, thin stranger with red eyes had calmly touched the wolf earlier. After the stranger left, Berserker watched him and became quiet. When the moon rose, all the wolves began to howl. Near midnight, the cage bars were found broken and Berserker was gone. Later, the wolf returns to the zoo by himself. His head is cut by broken glass from the top of a wall. The keeper treats him gently and locks him safely inside his cage. At the asylum, Renfield suddenly attacks Dr. Seward with a dinner knife and cuts his wrist. Seward knocks him down before he can strike again. Renfield sees the blood on the floor and licks it like an animal. He repeats, "The blood is the life." The attendants take him away while Seward binds his injured wrist. Escape means to get free from a place. Example: Berserker escapes from the zoo. A keeper cares for animals. Example: the wolf keeper describes the stranger. Van Helsing sends an urgent telegram telling Seward to watch Lucy that night and protect the garlic. Because the address is incomplete, the message arrives 22 hours late. Lucy is alone that night and hears flapping at her window. Her mother comes in and lies beside her. A deep howl sounds outside, and a great gray wolf crashes through the glass. The shock stops Mrs. Westenra's weak heart. As she falls, she tears the garlic from Lucy's neck. Small dark shapes spin through the broken window, and Lucy loses consciousness beneath her mother's body. The frightened maids enter and move Mrs. Westenra. Lucy sends them to drink wine and recover. When they do not return, she discovers all 4 unconscious on the dining room floor. Someone has mixed laudanum into the wine. Lucy is now alone with her dead mother and the sleeping servants. She hears the wolf outside and sees strange particles circling in the room. Believing she may die, Lucy writes an exact account of the night. She hides the paper inside her clothing. Her last thoughts are of Arthur, and she prays for protection. Laudanum was a powerful liquid medicine that caused sleep. Example: someone puts laudanum in the wine. Unconscious means not awake or aware. Example: the servants lie unconscious on the floor. The chapter brings several dangers together: Dracula's red-eyed appearance, the escaped wolf, and Renfield's hunger for blood. None of the characters yet understands how these events are connected. Van Helsing's protection worked while the garlic remained in place. Each accidental removal gave the hidden enemy another opportunity. The doctors are fighting a danger they can observe but still cannot name. Lucy has survived repeated attacks and transfusions, but she is weaker each time. Now the broken window and her mother's death leave her in greater danger than before. Seward is exhausted and has lost blood himself. Van Helsing is away, and his warning arrived too late. The friends who try to protect Lucy do not yet know what happened at Hillingham. The returning wolf carries cuts from broken glass, revealing where it has been. Lucy's account provides the missing evidence if the doctors arrive in time to find it. Morning approaches while Lucy waits alone in the damaged room. The house is silent except for the drugged servants. Her hidden memorandum may be the only clear witness to the night's terrible events. Evidence is information showing what happened. Example: the broken glass is important evidence. A memorandum is a written record or note. Example: Lucy hides her memorandum in her clothing. A wolf breaks into Lucy's room. Her mother dies, and the servants are drugged. Why did Van Helsing want the garlic to remain around Lucy? In the next chapter, Seward and Van Helsing enter the silent house and fight to save Lucy. Chapter 12. On September 18th, Seward reaches Hillingham and receives no answer. Every door and window is locked. Van Helsing arrives moments later, and both men fear they are too late. They cut through the bars of a kitchen window and enter the silent house. In the dining room, they find 4 servants unconscious from laudanum. Upstairs, Mrs. Westenra lies dead beside Lucy. Lucy is terribly pale, but Van Helsing hears a faint heartbeat. He orders Seward to bring brandy and wake the servants. They warm Lucy in a hot bath and rub brandy on her lips and hands. Her heart begins to beat more strongly, but she still needs another transfusion. Seward and Van Helsing are too weak to give more blood. Then Quincy Moore speaks from the next room. Arthur sent him to learn how Lucy was, and he offers to help immediately. Quincy gives his blood to Lucy. Her heart and lungs improve, although she responds more slowly than before. Van Helsing gives her morphia, and she falls into a deep sleep. Revive means to bring someone back to consciousness or strength. Example: the doctors try to revive Lucy. A donor gives blood to another person. Example: Quincy becomes Lucy's 4th donor. A paper falls from Lucy's clothing. It is her account of the wolf, her mother's death, and the drug servants. Van Helsing reads it and finally understands more of the attack. Seward registers Mrs. Westenra's death as the result of her heart disease. He wants to prevent a public investigation that could expose Lucy to more suffering. Quincy asks Seward about Lucy's transfusions. He realizes that Arthur, Seward, Van Helsing, and he have all given blood. Still, Lucy continues to lose strength, and no one knows where the blood goes. Quincy compares the mystery to a vampire bat that once attacked his horse. He promises to follow the doctor's instructions and help them guard Lucy. When Lucy wakes, she understands that her mother is dead and weeps quietly. The doctors promise that someone will remain with her at all times. As Lucy sleeps, she tears her memorandum in half without waking. Her hands continue the action after Van Helsing takes the pieces. He watches this strange behavior but gives no explanation. An investigation is a careful search for facts. Example: Seward hopes to avoid a public investigation. An account is a description of events. Example: Lucy writes an account of the attack. During the night, Lucy becomes weaker each time she sleeps. Seward and Van Helsing never leave her alone. Outside, Quincy quietly walks around the house on guard. By daylight, Lucy's teeth appear longer and sharper while she sleeps. When she wakes, her gentle expression returns. She asks for Arthur, and the doctors send for him. Arthur arrives near sunset and tries to comfort her. His presence gives Lucy a little strength. The doctors fear that she will not survive another day. Meanwhile, Mina writes happily about her new home with Jonathan and Mr. Hawkins. The letter remains unopened because Lucy is too ill to read it. Another report says Renfield attacked workers carrying heavy wooden boxes from the empty house beside the asylum. He shouts that they are robbing his lord and master. The boxes have come from Carfax, linking Renfield's violent excitement to Dracula's new property. The asylum staff restrain him after a difficult struggle. Inherit means to receive property after someone dies. Example: Jonathan inherits Mr. Hawkins's business. Restrain means to control someone's movement. Example: the attendants restrain Renfield. Mina sends another unopened letter saying Mr. Hawkins has died suddenly. Jonathan inherits his business and fortune. The responsibility troubles him because his illness has damaged his confidence. On September 20th, Seward watches Lucy beneath garlic placed around the windows and her neck. A large bat repeatedly strikes the window while she moves between sleep and consciousness. When asleep, Lucy pushes the garlic away and looks strange. When awake, she holds it close for protection. At sunrise, the doctors discover that the wounds on her throat have completely disappeared. Van Helsing says Lucy is dying and calls Arthur to her. In a strange voice, she asks Arthur to kiss her. Van Helsing violently pulls him back, warning that the kiss would endanger both their souls. Lucy becomes herself again and thanks Van Helsing. She asks him to protect Arthur and give her peace. Arthur kisses her forehead once, and they say goodbye with their eyes. Lucy stops breathing and dies. Seward believes her suffering has ended, but Van Helsing disagrees. He says this is not the end, it is only the beginning. Conscious means awake and aware. Example: Lucy's expression changes when she is conscious. The soul is the spiritual part of a person. Example: Van Helsing warns Arthur about danger to his soul. Despite the efforts of 4 blood donors, Lucy dies with Arthur beside her. Why does Van Helsing stop Arthur from kissing Lucy? The next chapter begins after Lucy's death, when strange reports make her story even darker. Chapter 13. After Lucy's death, Van Helsing and Seward prepare for a funeral. Lucy looks strangely beautiful and peaceful in her coffin. The 2 wounds on her throat are no longer visible. Van Helsing places garlic and a small crucifix near Lucy's body. He says these objects are necessary for reasons Seward does not yet understand. A servant later steals the crucifix after someone offers her money. Arthur has now lost both Lucy and his father. He inherits his father's title and becomes Lord Godalming. His friends remain close because grief has left him exhausted. During the funeral, Van Helsing suddenly laughs and then cries. Seward is shocked by this strange reaction. Van Helsing explains that laughter can release pain when a person cannot bear any more sorrow. Van Helsing asks Seward for medical tools and speaks mysteriously about examining Lucy's body. He delays his plan because the missing crucifix has changed the situation. A funeral is a ceremony after someone dies. Example: Lucy's friends attend her funeral. A crucifix is a cross showing Jesus. Example: Van Helsing places a crucifix near Lucy. On September 22nd, Mina and Jonathan travel to Exeter. Jonathan is still weak, but their quiet married life is helping him recover. Mina worries about the terrible experiences recorded in his private journal. While walking in London, Jonathan suddenly sees a tall man with a dark mustache and sharp face. The man is younger than the Count he knew, but Jonathan recognizes Dracula. Dracula is watching a beautiful woman in the street. Jonathan becomes pale, grips Mina's arm, and says that the Count has returned. The shock overwhelms him, and later he cannot clearly remember what happened. Mina realizes that Jonathan's Transylvanian journal may contain the truth. She decides to read it so she can understand and help him. She promises to keep his confidence and face the danger with him. Back in Exeter, Mina and Jonathan return to a house made sad by Mr. Hawkins's death. They must handle new responsibilities while Jonathan continues to heal. Recognize means to know someone from before. Example: Jonathan recognizes Dracula in London. Confidence means private trust. Example: Mina promises to keep Jonathan's confidence. Seward writes that Lucy's funeral is over. Arthur returns home, and the friends try to continue their lives. Van Helsing, however, believes their real work has not yet begun. The professor asks disturbing questions about Lucy's coffin and grave. Seward fears that grief has affected his old teacher's mind. Still, he knows Van Helsing has reasons for every careful action. Several young children begin disappearing at night near Hampstead Heath. They return weak and confused the following morning. Each child tells a similar story about a beautiful lady. The children call the stranger the Bloofer lady, their childish way of saying beautiful lady. They say she invited them to walk with her after dark. Doctors find 2 small wounds on the children's throats. Newspapers suggest that a rat, dog, or other animal caused them. Police are told to watch the heath and protect children wandering alone. Lure means to attract someone into danger. Example: the Bloofer lady lures children away. A wound is an injury to the body. Example: each child has a wound on the throat. The reports sound almost like a children's game, but the repeated wounds make the situation serious. No one yet connects the attacks with Lucy's recent death. Another missing child is discovered beneath a bush, terribly weak and pale. It has the same 2 marks on its throat. The child also says that the Bloofer lady led it away. These attacks give Van Helsing new evidence. The danger he feared after Lucy's death is now moving through London. Seward has not yet accepted what that evidence means. Jonathan's recognition of Dracula proves that the Count reached England and can appear younger after feeding. Mina's decision to read the journal will bring another important witness into the mystery. The chapter closes with the newspaper warning families about the Hampstead horror. A beautiful lady is hunting children, and the marks on their throats repeat Lucy's own wounds. Evidence is information that helps prove something. Example: the newspaper gives Van Helsing new evidence. Inherit means to receive a title or property after a death. Example: Arthur inherits his father's title. Jonathan sees Dracula in London while mysterious children report attacks by the Bloofer lady. Why does Mina decide to read Jonathan's journal? In the next chapter, Mina contacts Van Helsing and Seward learns the terrible identity of the Bloofer lady. Chapter 14. On September 23rd, Jonathan has a bad night after seeing Dracula. Mina decides that uncertainty is more dangerous than knowledge. She opens his journal and begins reading about the castle. The story is almost impossible to believe. Locked doors, 3 women, Dracula crawling down walls, and boxes of earth. Mina types the journal so others can read it clearly. She writes to Van Helsing because Jonathan mentioned him after his illness. She asks whether the professor can visit and advise them. Van Helsing answers warmly and agrees to come. When Van Helsing meets Mina, he is impressed by her courage, intelligence, and loyalty. She gives him the typed journal and asks him to judge whether Jonathan's memories are true. Van Helsing reads the account carefully. He tells Mina that Jonathan is not mad and that the events really happened. This frightening answer also gives Mina relief, because she can finally trust her husband completely. Uncertainty means not knowing what is true. Example: Mina finds uncertainty difficult to bear. Type means to write using a keyboard or typewriter. Example: Mina types Jonathan's journal. Mina tells Jonathan that Van Helsing believes him. Jonathan's shame and doubt begin to disappear. He decides to face the truth and help fight the Count. Van Helsing writes that Jonathan has a strong mind, injured by terrible experiences rather than madness. He praises Mina for giving her husband the support he needs. Jonathan starts his journal again on September 26th. He says he now understands that silence will not protect them. He is ready to use his legal knowledge and memories against Dracula. At the railway station, Van Helsing buys a newspaper and reads about the injured children. The repeated throat wounds immediately remind him of Lucy. He changes his plans and returns to London instead of leaving the case behind. He knows the reports confirm his worst fear. Confirm means to show that something is true. Example: the newspaper reports confirm Van Helsing's fear. Relief is comfort after worry. Example: Mina feels relief when Jonathan is believed. Van Helsing visits Seward, who is surprised to see him again so soon. The professor asks his former student to keep an open mind about things science cannot yet explain. Seward wants facts and ordinary causes. Van Helsing reminds him that accepted science often begins with ideas that once seemed impossible. He asks Seward not to reject a large truth because of a smaller belief. They review Lucy's illness: the lost blood, throat wounds, night attacks, garlic, and changes during sleep. They also compare the same marks found on the missing children. Seward first assumes that the creature which attacked Lucy is now attacking the children. Van Helsing says that answer is understandable, but wrong. The professor explains that Lucy did not find peace after death. She has become one of the undead. At night, she can leave her tomb and feed on the living. An open mind is a willingness to consider new ideas. Example: Van Helsing asks Seward to keep an open mind. The undead are dead people who return in a supernatural form. Example: Van Helsing says Lucy is undead. Seward struggles to accept that the gentle woman he loved could harm children. Van Helsing insists that the evil is not Lucy's true soul, but the curse controlling her body. The childish phrase, "Bloofer lady," now has a horrifying meaning. The beautiful figure is Lucy herself. The small throat wounds were made by her sharpened teeth. Van Helsing's conclusion connects the newspaper reports with every strange sign from Lucy's illness. Seward can no longer dismiss each event as a separate accident. Mina and Jonathan now possess one part of the truth about Dracula, while Van Helsing and Seward possess another. Their records will need to be brought together. The chapter ends with Van Helsing covering his face in despair. He tells Seward that the children's wounds were made by Miss Lucy. The doctors must now prove the truth and free her from the curse. A curse is a supernatural power that brings harm. Example: Lucy's body is controlled by a curse. Dismiss means to decide something is not important or true. Example: Seward can no longer dismiss the evidence. Mina learns Jonathan told the truth, and Van Helsing identifies Lucy as the Bloofer lady. What newspaper detail connects Lucy with the missing children? In the next chapter, Van Helsing takes Seward to Lucy's tomb to prove his impossible claim. Chapter 15. Seward reacts with anger when Van Helsing says Lucy attacked the children. The The professor calmly asks him to examine the evidence. He invites Seward to visit the injured child and spend the night at Lucy's tomb. At the hospital, the doctors see 2 fresh punctures on the child's throat. They closely resemble the wounds Lucy once carried. The child says it wants to play again with the Bloofer lady. After dark, Van Helsing and Seward enter the churchyard and unlock the Westerner tomb. Van Helsing opens Lucy's coffin while Seward watches with deep discomfort. The coffin is empty. Seward admits that Lucy's body is missing, but still searches for an ordinary explanation. Van Helsing says they must wait for stronger proof. The 2 men hide on opposite sides of the churchyard. After midnight, Seward sees a pale figure moving among the trees. Van Helsing finds a small child with a figure disappeared. A puncture is a small deep hole. Example: the child has 2 punctures on its throat. A tomb is a place where a dead person is buried. Example: the doctors enter Lucy's tomb. The child's throat is not wounded because the doctors arrived in time. They leave it safely where a policeman will find it. Seward remains uncertain about who carried the child. The following afternoon, the men return after another funeral has ended. They open Lucy's coffin again. This time her body is lying inside. Lucy looks more beautiful than she did before burial. Her lips are red, her cheeks have color, and her teeth are sharper. Her body shows none of the normal changes of death. Van Helsing explains that Lucy leaves the tomb at night and returns before daylight. Because she died while under Dracula's influence, she now exists between death and life. Seward finally begins to accept the truth. He asks how they can free Lucy from this condition. Van Helsing says the body must be treated according to ancient vampire knowledge. A coffin is a box used to bury a body. Example: Lucy's coffin is empty at night. Proof is evidence showing that something is true. Example: Van Helsing searches for proof. The professor describes the terrible task: a stake through the body, followed by removing the head and placing garlic in the mouth. Seward is horrified, but he now fears the undead creature more than the dead body. Van Helsing decides not to act immediately. Arthur must see the evidence himself, or he may always believe they dishonored Lucy. The truth will be painful, but doubt would cause him even greater suffering. Van Helsing remains alone in the churchyard to prevent Lucy from leaving the tomb that night. He uses garlic and a crucifix to seal the entrance. He leaves a note explaining the danger in case Dracula attacks him. The Count has great strength and can command wolves. If Van Helsing dies, Seward must use the collected papers to find and destroy Dracula. After sleeping, Seward again doubts the supernatural explanation. He wonders whether Van Helsing himself could be responsible. Still, he agrees to meet the professor that night. Seal means to close something completely. Example: Van Helsing seals the tomb entrance. Supernatural describes something beyond natural laws. Example: Seward doubts the supernatural explanation. Arthur and Quincy join Seward in Van Helsing's room. They do not understand the plan, but Quincy trusts the professor's honesty. Arthur is tired of grief and asks for a clear explanation. Van Helsing asks Arthur for permission to open Lucy's coffin and carry out a duty to the dead and living. Arthur is shocked and refuses to allow any damage to her body. The professor explains that he also loved Lucy and gave his own blood to save her. He would never cause this pain unless the danger were real. Van Helsing asks Arthur only to come, look, and listen before making a final decision. If the evidence does not change his mind, the professor promises to answer for his actions. Arthur remains deeply upset, but accepts the request. Quincy and Seward will go with them. Together, the 4 men prepare to face the truth inside Lucy's tomb. Permission means agreement allowing an action. Example: Van Helsing asks Arthur for permission. Dishonor means to treat someone without respect. Example: Arthur fears they will dishonor Lucy. Seward sees Lucy's empty coffin and living-looking body, while Arthur agrees to examine the evidence. Why does Van Helsing wait before freeing Lucy from the curse? In the next chapter, the four men enter the tomb, and Arthur sees what Lucy has become. Chapter 16. Arthur, Quincy, Seward, and Van Helsing enter the churchyard after dark. Van Helsing opens Lucy's empty coffin. Arthur is horrified, but the professor asks him to wait for the full proof. The men hide near the tomb. Before dawn, a white figure approaches carrying a small child. They recognize Lucy, but her face is cold, cruel, and unlike the woman they loved. Lucy drops the child when she sees the men. She calls to Arthur in a sweet, tempting voice and asks him to come to her. For a moment, Arthur begins moving forward as if under a spell. Van Helsing raises a sacred object between them. Lucy's beauty changes into anger, and she retreats toward the tomb. The professor blocks the door with a holy wafer, and she cannot enter. Van Helsing removes part of the seal and allows Lucy inside before closing it again. The men take the unharmed child to safety. Arthur now knows that the creature is real. Tempt means to attract someone toward danger. Example: Lucy tries to tempt Arthur. Seal means to close something completely. Example: Van Helsing seals the tomb. The next day, they return to the tomb in daylight. Lucy lies in her coffin, looking young and beautiful. Van Helsing explains that they must destroy the vampire curse to free her soul. He tells Arthur that the person who loved Lucy most should perform the central act. Arthur accepts the duty despite his grief. The others promise to remain beside him. Van Helsing prepares a wooden stake and hammer. He places the point over Lucy's heart and guides Arthur carefully. Arthur gathers his courage and drives the stake down. The body moves terribly for a short time, but Arthur does not stop. At last, the struggle ends and the tomb becomes silent. The men are shaken by what they have witnessed. Lucy's face changes immediately. The cruel expression disappears, and her true peaceful beauty returns. Arthur understands that the woman he loved is finally free. A stake is a strong, pointed piece of wood. Example: Arthur uses a wooden stake. A curse is a supernatural power that causes harm. Example: Lucy is freed from the vampire curse. Van Helsing asks whether Arthur forgives him. Arthur thanks him for returning Lucy's soul and giving him peace. He can now kiss her forehead without danger. Seward and Van Helsing complete the ancient protection. They remove the head, place garlic in the mouth, and close the coffin. Arthur receives the key to the tomb. Outside, the sunshine, birds, and fresh air feel completely different. One painful part of their work is finished. Their relief is real, although their larger enemy remains. Van Helsing says Dracula caused all their sorrow. The Count must be found and destroyed before he creates more victims. He warns that the task will involve danger and suffering. Each man takes Van Helsing's hand and promises to continue to the end. Their private grief becomes a shared mission. Arthur, Quincy, and Seward are now united against Dracula. A mission is an important task. Example: the friends begin a shared mission. Destroy means to end something completely. Example: they promise to destroy Dracula. Van Helsing plans another meeting in 2 nights. He will explain what vampires can do and how they can be defeated. 2 more allies will join them. The professor must return briefly to Amsterdam. Seward goes with him to discuss the evidence and prepare their records. They know careful information will be as important as courage. Lucy was not responsible for the evil performed through her body. Destroying the vampire form releases the person trapped inside. This truth allows Arthur to grieve without fear or doubt. The four blood donors could not save Lucy's life, but together they have saved her from remaining undead. Their loyalty now turns toward protecting other innocent people. The chapter ends with a new promise. They will find the author of their sorrow and stop him forever. The hunt for Count Dracula is about to begin. Grief is deep sadness after a loss. Example: Arthur's grief becomes easier to bear. Release means to set someone free. Example: the ancient act releases Lucy's soul. Arthur sees the undead Lucy and helps free her soul from the vampire curse. What stops Lucy from entering her tomb? In the next chapter, Mina organizes the group's records and brings Dracula's enemies together. Chapter 17. Seward returns to the asylum and finds Mina waiting. He is surprised by her calm manner and sharp intelligence. She already knows much of the story from Jonathan and Van Helsing. Mina asks Seward to let her read his diary. He explains that it is recorded on phonograph cylinders instead of paper. She is delighted by the machine and asks to hear it. Seward gives Mina permission to listen and type the recordings. He then begins reading Jonathan's typed journal. The castle story changes his understanding of Dracula. Mina listens to Seward's voice describing Lucy's illness and death. She cries, but continues because the information may save others. Her typed copy turns the private recordings into useful evidence. Seward admires Mina's courage and practical skill. For the first time, he sees how all their separate documents can become one history. Dates and events can now be compared. A phonograph records and plays sound. Example: Seward keeps his diary on a phonograph. Transcribe means to turn speech into writing. Example: Mina transcribes Seward's recordings. Mina and Seward work together after dinner. She types while he explains names, places, and missing details. Their work gives the group a clear foundation for the hunt. Jonathan arrives the next morning and speaks with Seward. Marriage and a new purpose have restored much of his strength. He is no longer the broken man who escaped from the castle. Jonathan investigates Dracula's 50 boxes of earth. Letters and shipping records show that they were delivered from Whitby to Carfax. He begins tracing every company and worker involved. A station master and carriers help Jonathan follow the route. The boxes were heavy, dirty, and moved under unusual instructions. This practical legal investigation gives the group their first physical target. Mina arranges every diary, letter, telegram, and newspaper report in chronological order. She creates copies so each person can study the same facts. The scattered mystery becomes one connected story. Chronological means arranged by time. Example: Mina puts the papers in chronological order. Evidence is information that helps prove something. Example: shipping records provide evidence. The records link Dracula's arrival with Renfield's excitement, Lucy's attacks, the wolf, and the boxes at Carfax. Events that once seemed accidental now follow a clear pattern. Arthur and Quincy arrive at the asylum. Mina meets them for the first time and immediately understands their grief. They recognize her as a trusted member of the group. Arthur tries to speak about Lucy, but loses control of his emotions. Mina lets him cry on her shoulder like a tired child. Her sympathy gives him comfort he has not found elsewhere. Arthur asks Mina to treat him as a brother for Lucy's sake. He promises that she can always call on him for help. Their friendship is formed through shared sorrow. Mina also offers friendship to Quincy. He carries his own pain quietly and worries first about Arthur. He thanks her with the same gentle words he once used for Lucy. Sympathy is care for someone suffering. Example: Mina shows Arthur sympathy. Practical means useful in a real situation. Example: Jonathan begins a practical investigation. Seward sees that Mina's presence strengthens the men as well as the investigation. She can organize facts and also help them speak honestly. Both kinds of work are necessary. Jonathan and Mina complete the first organized collection of papers. Everyone can now read the entire case from Transylvania to London. The group is finally working from common knowledge. Jonathan's search for the boxes gives them a possible way to limit Dracula's movements. Without his native Earth, the Count will lose safe resting places. They must discover whether all 50 boxes remain at Carfax. The friends prepare for Van Helsing's meeting. Mina, Jonathan, Seward, Arthur, and Quincy now understand that their separate lives were touched by one enemy. Their evidence has brought them together. The chapter ends with bonds of trust forming around Mina. Her compassion comforts Lucy's friends, and her records prepare the coming campaign. The group is becoming a team. A campaign is an organized effort toward a goal. Example: the group prepares a campaign against Dracula. An ally is someone who helps in a struggle. Example: Mina becomes a trusted ally. Mina combines the diaries and comforts Lucy's friends, while Jonathan traces Dracula's boxes. Why is chronological order important to the investigation? In the next chapter, Van Helsing explains the powers and weaknesses of vampires. Chapter 18. Before the main meeting, Seward visits Renfield and finds him unusually calm and polite. Renfield speaks like an educated gentleman rather than an excited patient. The sudden change makes Seward suspicious. Mina asks to meet Renfield. He welcomes her respectfully and discusses his former habit of collecting lives through flies and spiders. He says that foolish period is now finished. Renfield appears interested when he hears that Mina is Jonathan Harker's wife. He behaves with complete self-control during their conversation. Mina leaves with a surprisingly favorable impression. The group gathers in Seward's study with all the typed records. Van Helsing praises Mina's work because knowledge is their strongest first weapon. He begins explaining what they face. A vampire is undead and can remain active for centuries. It keeps human memories and intelligence, but loses ordinary mercy. Dracula has studied war, law, languages, and modern England. Self-control means the ability to manage your actions. Example: Renfield speaks with complete self-control. A weapon is something used to fight. Example: knowledge is the group's first weapon. The Count has the strength of 20 men and can control wolves, rats, bats, owls, foxes, and other creatures. He can also influence storms, wind, fog, and thunder. Dracula can become small or appear as mist. He can move through narrow cracks and sometimes vanish from sight. He casts no reflection in a mirror and no normal shadow. He can influence people at a distance, especially while they sleep. His bite can weaken victims and eventually make them undead. This is what happened to Lucy. However, the Count is not free to act everywhere. He cannot enter a home for the first time unless someone invites him. After that first invitation, he may return whenever he wishes. Daylight limits many of Dracula's powers. At certain times, he can change form only under special conditions. He needs protected resting places filled with earth from his homeland. A reflection is an image seen in a mirror. Example: Dracula has no reflection. Invite means to ask someone to enter. Example: A vampire needs an invitation to enter a home. Garlic, a crucifix, and a sacred wafer can repel or block a vampire when used correctly. A branch of wild rose placed on a coffin may also prevent escape. To end the curse completely, the hunters must use ancient methods against the resting body. Their experience with Lucy has proved that these methods work. Van Helsing admits that they still do not know everything. Dracula is intelligent and learns from every attack. The group must use both modern investigation and old knowledge. Jonathan explains the 50 boxes delivered to Carfax. The men plan to inspect the estate and identify every resting place. Destroying or blessing the earth could trap the Count. The friends promise secrecy, courage, and loyalty. Each understands that the hunt may lead to death. Mina asks to share the danger because her records and judgment are valuable. Repel means to force something away. Example, garlic can repel a vampire. A resting place is where someone sleeps or remains. Example, Dracula needs boxes as resting places. The men respect Mina, but they begin thinking that she should be protected from the worst parts of the work. This decision is made with love, though it may leave her without important knowledge. As the group prepares to leave, an attendant brings an urgent request from Renfield. He wants to speak to them together. His calm seriousness is very different from his usual behavior. Renfield asks Seward to release him immediately, even under guards or chains. He says remaining in the asylum will bring terrible guilt. He insists that he is completely sane at this moment. Van Helsing and the others question him carefully, but Renfield refuses to explain the danger. Seward believes it may be another clever performance. He denies the request. Renfield falls to his knees and begs them to save his soul. When they still refuse, he becomes quiet and asks Seward to remember that he tried to warn them. The chapter ends with his unexplained warning. Release means to allow someone to leave. Example, Renfield asks Seward to release him. Implore means to beg with great emotion. Example, Renfield implores the group to listen. Van Helsing explains Dracula's powers and limits, while Renfield desperately asks to leave the asylum. What must happen before Dracula can enter a home for the first time? In the next chapter, the hunters begin acting on their plan as danger closes around the asylum. Chapter 19. Jonathan and the other men leave Mina sleeping and go to search Carfax before dawn. They are still troubled by Renfield's desperate warning, but Seward believes keeping him locked inside is safest. Van Helsing gives each man a crucifix, garlic, a sacred wafer, a knife, a revolver, and a small electric lamp. He warns them that Dracula has the strength of 20 men. They unlock the old house and enter through a creaking door. Dust, cobwebs, and deep shadows cover every room. Jonathan feels as if someone unseen is moving among them. In the ruined chapel, the air smells of earth, decay, and blood. The men force themselves to continue their search. They count the large boxes of Transylvanian earth. Only 29 of the original 50 boxes remain. 21 have been moved to other hiding places. For a moment, Jonathan thinks he sees Dracula's pale face and red eyes in the darkness. Decay is the process of becoming rotten or ruined. Example, the chapel smells of earth and decay. Remain means to stay or be left. Example, only 29 boxes remain at Carfax. A shining movement appears in one corner. Hundreds of rats begin pouring into the chapel until the floor seems alive. The men retreat as the swarm grows into thousands. Arthur opens an outside door and blows a silver whistle. 3 small terriers race across from Seward's grounds. At first, the dogs stop at the threshold and howl in fear. The men lift the dogs into the chapel. The terriers attack, and the rats suddenly flee. The heavy feeling of evil disappears with them. The hunters search the rest of Carfax, but find no more boxes. Tracks in the dust show where the missing boxes were carried out. Van Helsing locks the house and keeps the key. At dawn, the men return to the asylum. Jonathan finds Mina sleeping quietly, although she looks unusually pale. He decides that the group must hide all future details from her for her own protection. A swarm is a very large moving group. Example, a swarm of rats fills the chapel. A threshold is the entrance to a room or building. Example, the dogs stop at the threshold. Later, Seward visits Renfield. The patient refuses to speak and insults Van Helsing when the professor questions him. His changing moods still appear connected to Dracula's movements. Mina is hurt because Jonathan and the others now keep their plan secret. She understands that they mean to protect her, but she feels lonely and anxious. She continues writing her journal so Jonathan can read it later. Mina blames herself for Lucy's fate and cries in private. She remembers going to Whitby and wonders whether everything would have been different without her. Her weakness and sadness are becoming stronger. Mina recalls the previous night. She saw a thin white mist cross the grass and slowly gather against the asylum wall. Renfield was shouting below her window as if begging someone to stop. She went back to bed and fell into a heavy, unnatural sleep. In her dream, cold fog entered the room even though the window was closed. Her arms and legs felt too heavy to move. Exclude means to leave someone out. Example, the men exclude Mina from their plans. Unnatural means strange and not normal. Example, Mina falls into an unnatural sleep. The mist formed a dark pillar beside the bed. One red point of light divided into two burning eyes. Mina remembered the terrible women Jonathan had seen in Dracula's castle. A pale white face bent over her from inside the fog. Then everything became black, and she remembered nothing more until morning. Mina tells herself it was only a disturbing dream. The following day, Mina feels weak and without energy. Renfield asks to see her, behaves gently, and kisses her hand before blessing her. His sadness deeply affects her. That night the men again discuss their discoveries without Mina. She knows Jonathan has important news, but they send her upstairs to rest. She asks Seward for a mild sleeping medicine. Mina takes the medicine and waits alone for sleep. She does not know that the mist and the pale face were real signs of Dracula. By excluding her, the hunters have left her in danger without warning. Mist is a thin cloud close to the ground. Example, white mist moves toward Mina's window. Vulnerable means open to danger or harm. Example, Mina is vulnerable because she has not been warned. The hunters discover that 21 boxes are missing, while a mysterious mist reaches Mina's room. Why do the terriers enter the chapel? In the next chapter, Jonathan traces Dracula's new hiding places as Renfield's behavior becomes more alarming. Chapter 20. Jonathan begins tracing the 21 missing boxes. He finds Thomas Snelling, who helped move them from Carfax. Snelling directs him to another worker named Joseph Smollett. Smollett remembers that a driver called Sam Blocksam carried several boxes. Jonathan pays him to find Blocksam's address. The investigation moves through workers, lodging houses, and warehouses across London. The next morning, Jonathan locates Blocksam at a building site. Blocksam says he carried 9 heavy boxes from Carfax to a house in Piccadilly. An old, thin man with a white mustache helped him lift them. Jonathan immediately recognizes the description of Dracula. The Count handled the heavy boxes as if they weighed almost nothing. This means Dracula can move his resting places without help. Bloxam cannot remember the address, but he describes a tall, dusty house near a white church. Jonathan finds it and believes it is another of Dracula's lairs. A property agent may know who bought it. Trace means to follow clues and discover where something went. Example: Jonathan traces the missing boxes. A lair is a hidden resting place for a dangerous creature. Example: the Piccadilly house is one of Dracula's lairs. The agent refuses to reveal a client's name. Jonathan says he is acting for Lord Godalming, and the agent promises to send Arthur the information. Jonathan returns to the asylum tired but hopeful. Mina looks pale and unhappy because everyone is keeping secrets from her. Jonathan feels guilty but still believes silence will protect her. He plans to send her home to Exeter. Arthur and Quincy have also found clues. 6 boxes went to a house in Mile End, and 6 more went to a house in Bermondsey. Together with the 9 in Piccadilly, this accounts for all 21 missing boxes. The group now knows 4 possible lairs: Carfax, Piccadilly, Mile End, and Bermondsey. They plan to enter each house and make every box unusable to Dracula. They cannot act until daylight and until Arthur receives the Piccadilly owner's name. For one more night, they decide to wait. Mina takes a sleeping medicine while the men discuss the hunt. Account for means to explain where something is. Example: the 3 deliveries account for all 21 boxes. Reveal means to make hidden information known. Example: the agent will not reveal the buyer's name. Meanwhile, Seward studies Renfield. The patient says he no longer cares about small creatures and claims that he will never lack life. He refuses to explain who has made this promise. Seward asks whether Renfield wants souls as well as lives. The idea frightens him, because he fears being followed by the souls of everything he has eaten. He insists that he wants no souls. Renfield almost speaks about drinking, but stops himself twice. He says flies, spiders, and rats are now too small to interest him. He expects a much greater source of life. Seward suddenly understands the terrible meaning. Renfield may have been promised a human life, and Dracula may be planning another attack. He immediately tells Van Helsing. When the doctors return, Renfield is collecting flies again and refuses to answer questions. His calm appearance hides whatever bargain or fear controls him. They arrange to watch his room during the night. A bargain is an agreement between 2 sides. Example: Renfield may have made a bargain with Dracula. Insist means to say firmly that something is true. Example: Renfield insists that he wants no souls. A letter arrives from the property agents. The Piccadilly house was bought with cash by a foreign nobleman calling himself Count de Ville. The false name confirms that Dracula owns the house. The hunters prepare horses and collect tools. They must bless the imported earth between sunrise and sunset, when Dracula is weakest. Van Helsing searches old medical books for more protection. Seward wonders whether all of them have become mad. Yet every separate clue supports the same impossible truth. They agree that the next day's work may begin the end of the count. Renfield has become strangely quiet. Seward wonders whether he can sense the danger approaching Dracula through their supernatural connection. Then a wild scream suddenly comes from his room. An attendant rushes in and says Renfield has suffered a terrible accident. He is lying face down on the floor in a pool of blood. Seward runs to him as the chapter ends. Confirm means to show that something is true. Example: the false name confirms Dracula owns the house. An attendant is someone who watches and cares for a patient. Example: an attendant finds Renfield on the floor. Jonathan locates Dracula's 3 new houses, while Renfield's secret connection to the Count ends in violence. How many boxes were taken to Piccadilly? In the next chapter, Renfield reveals the truth, and the hunters discover Dracula inside Mina's room. Chapter 21. Seward finds Renfield badly injured on the floor. His face is covered with blood, one side of his body cannot move, and his skull is fractured. The injuries are too severe to be an ordinary fall. Van Helsing performs an emergency operation to reduce the pressure on Renfield's brain. Arthur and Quincy wait beside the bed. They hope he will wake long enough to explain what happened. Renfield opens his eyes and first thinks he has had a terrible dream. Then he remembers that everything was real. He says he is only a few minutes before he dies. Renfield explains that Dracula first came to his window inside the mist. The Count promised him flies, moths, rats, and countless lives. Renfield opened the window and called him Lord and Master. Dracula entered through a gap only an inch wide. Later, he returned without bringing Renfield any reward. Renfield realized that the Count was taking life from Mina instead. A fracture is a crack or break in a bone. Example: Renfield has a skull fracture. Conscious means awake and aware. Example: the doctors hope Renfield becomes conscious. When Dracula came again that night, Renfield tried to stop him. He held the mist until the Count became solid and fought him. For a moment, Renfield believed he might win. Dracula's burning eyes destroyed Renfield's strength. The Count lifted him and threw him violently to the floor. Then the mist passed under the door toward Mina's room. Van Helsing understands there is no time to lose. The men collect their sacred protections and rush upstairs. They find Jonathan and Mina's bedroom door locked. They break the door open. Jonathan lies unconscious on the bed, breathing heavily as if drugged. Beside him, Dracula holds Mina and forces her face against a wound in his chest. Van Helsing rises au sacred Waffe. Dracula releases Mina and moves back with a terrible expression. His red eyes burn with anger as he prepares to attack. Unconscious means not awake or aware. Example: Jonathan lies unconscious on the bed. Resist means to fight against something. Example: Dracula cannot resist the sacred wafer. The professor steps forward with the wafer, and the Count cannot resist it. Dracula becomes dark mist and escapes beneath the door. The men run after him, but he has vanished. Arthur finds that Dracula burned their papers and phonograph cylinders. Fortunately, another complete copy is locked in Seward's safe. Quincy sees a bat flying west from Renfield's window. Jonathan wakes and immediately embraces Mina. She cries that she's unclean and fears she may become his enemy. Jonathan promises that nothing will ever separate them. Van Helsing asks Mina to tell them exactly what happened. The group now understands that hiding information from her has failed terribly. There can be no more secrets. Mina says the sleeping medicine did not work at first. When she awoke later, Jonathan could not be moved, and white mist filled the room. Dracula appeared beside the bed. Embrace means to hold someone closely in your arms. Example: Jonathan embraces Mina. Threaten means to say that you will cause harm. Example: Dracula threatens to kill Jonathan. The Count threatened to kill Jonathan if Mina made a sound. He bit her throat and drank until her strength began to disappear. She felt unable to fight his command. Dracula mocked the hunters for leaving their loved one unprotected. He said Mina would now be connected to him and would come whenever he called. His attack was revenge against the whole group. Then Dracula opened a vein in his own chest and forced Mina to drink his blood. He intended to create a supernatural bond between them. Mina is horrified by what she was forced to do. While Mina tells her story, dawn brightens the sky. Jonathan's face becomes gray with shock, and his dark hair begins turning white. Renfield dies from the injuries he received while trying to protect Mina. The friends agree that someone must remain beside Mina and Jonathan. Their hunt is now more urgent and personal than ever. The sun rises over a house filled with grief, fear, and determination. A bond is a strong connection between people. Example: Dracula creates a supernatural bond with Mina. Determination is the firm decision to continue. Example: the attack fills the hunters with determination. Renfield dies after warning the hunters, and Dracula forces Mina into a terrible bond with him. What object forces Dracula to leave Mina's room? In the next chapter, the group begins destroying Dracula's boxes while trying to protect Mina from his curse. Chapter 22. The morning after Dracula attacks Mina, the friends meet to decide what to do. They promise that there will be no more secrets between them. Mina bravely agrees to keep all their records together. Mina says that if she ever becomes dangerous, someone must stop her. Van Helsing warns that she must remain alive while Dracula is undead. If she dies first, she may become a vampire like him. Van Helsing explains that daylight limits Dracula's power. The hunters have until sunset to find his boxes and make them useless. Their first target is the 29 boxes still at Carfax. Before leaving, Van Helsing tries to protect Mina by touching a sacred wafer to her forehead. It burns her skin like hot metal. A red scar appears, showing that Dracula's blood has changed her. Mina cries that she is unclean. Van Helsing promises that the scar will disappear when Dracula's curse is destroyed. The friends hold hands and promise to remain loyal to one another. Loyal means continuing to support someone. Example: the friends promise to remain loyal to Mina. A scar is a permanent mark left after an injury. Example: the wafer leaves a red scar on Mina's forehead. Jonathan secretly decides that if Mina becomes a vampire, he will not let her enter that terrible existence alone. His love gives him strength, but also fills him with desperate thoughts. At Carfax, the men open each box and place a piece of sacred wafer in the earth. The holy object prevents Dracula from resting there. They treat all 29 boxes before closing them again. Jonathan sees Mina watching from an asylum window and signals that the work succeeded. She waves goodbye as the men hurry toward London. They must reach the Piccadilly house before Dracula. Arthur hires a respectable locksmith and pretends that the empty Piccadilly house belongs to him. The lock is opened in full view of a policeman. Because they act calmly, no one suspects a break-in. Inside, the house smells like the chapel at Carfax. The hunters remain together because Dracula may be hiding in any dark room. In the dining room, they find boxes of earth. Sterilize here means to make Dracula's earth unusable. Example: the hunters sterilize the boxes with sacred wafer. A break-in is an illegal entry into a building. Example: the locksmith does not suspect a break-in. There should be 9 boxes, but only 8 remain. Dracula has already moved one final box to an unknown place. The men bless the 8 boxes they have found. They search the house and discover property documents, writing materials, dirty water marked with blood, and a large group of keys. The papers identify Dracula's houses in Mile, End, and Bermondsey. Arthur and Quincy take the keys and exact addresses. They leave to destroy the 6 boxes in each of the 2 houses. Jonathan, Seward, and Van Helsing stay behind at Piccadilly. The 3 men examine every paper for information about the missing box. Jonathan's legal experience helps him understand the property documents. However, they find no address for another hiding place. Time passes slowly as they wait. They know Dracula may return during daylight, when he is trapped in a physical body. This could be their best chance to face him directly. A document is an official written record. Example: Jonathan examines the property documents. Consume can mean to control someone's thoughts completely. Example: fear for Mina nearly consumes Jonathan. Jonathan is nearly consumed by fear for Mina. Van Helsing keeps him focused on practical details so that grief does not defeat him. Every minute before sunset matters. The hunters now understand Dracula's plan more clearly. He learned to move the boxes himself and scattered them across London as secret graves. Their careful investigation has destroyed almost all of those refuges. Yet the single missing box changes everything. As long as Dracula has one safe place filled with his native earth, he can hide and recover. They must find it before he escapes. Arthur and Quincy are still away at the Easter houses. The other men prepare sacred objects and weapons in case the Count appears. The silent Piccadilly house becomes a trap. The chapter ends with Jonathan, Seward, and Van Helsing waiting inside Dracula's house. They do not know whether their friends or their enemy will arrive first. Outside, the daylight is already passing. A refuge is a safe hiding place. Example: Dracula has only one refuge left. Physical means connected to the body. Example: daylight traps Dracula in a physical form. The hunters destroy most of Dracula's resting places, but one box is missing. What happens when Van Helsing touches Mina with the sacred wafer? In the next chapter, Dracula returns to Piccadilly and faces the hunters. Chapter 23. Seward, Jonathan, and Van Helsing wait anxiously in the Piccadilly house. Jonathan's hair has turned white, but his determination remains fierce. Van Helsing explains that Dracula is still learning how to use his powers. A telegram from Mina warns that Dracula left Carfax and traveled south. The Count is checking his scattered resting places. The men believe he will soon come to Piccadilly. Arthur and Quincy return with good news. They found the 6 boxes in Mile End and the 6 in Bermondsey and made all of them unusable. Only the single missing box remains. The men arrange themselves around the room with knives, revolvers, crucifixes, and sacred wafers. A key quietly enters the front door lock. Slow footsteps approach through the hall. Dracula suddenly leaps into the room with inhuman speed. Jonathan blocks one door while the others move forward together. The Count shows his sharp teeth and prepares to fight. Determination is a firm decision to continue. Example: Jonathan's determination remains fierce. Inhuman means beyond normal human ability or cruel. Example: Dracula moves within human speed. Jonathan attacks with his large knife. Dracula escapes the blade by a fraction of a second, but the knife cuts open his coat. Banknotes and gold coins spill across the floor. The hunters raise their sacred objects, forcing Dracula backward. His face shows hatred, anger, and fear. He dies beneath Jonathan's arm before a second blow can reach him. Dracula grabs some money and crashes through a closed window. He lands unharmed in the yard and runs toward the stable. The hunters follow, but cannot catch him. Before disappearing, Dracula threatens them. He claims he has other resting places and says his revenge will continue for centuries. He also declares that the women they love already belong to him. Van Helsing notices that Dracula's actions contradict his proud words. The Count hurried away and risked himself to recover money. This proves he is frightened and preparing to escape. Contradict means to show that a statement is not true. Example: Dracula's fearful actions contradict his brave words. Recover means to get something back. Example: Dracula tries to recover his money. The hunters return to the asylum before sunset. Mina comforts Jonathan and listens calmly to everything that happened. She asks them to remember that destroying Dracula should be an act of mercy, not hatred. Jonathan cannot yet feel mercy toward the monster who attacked his wife. Mina says that she may someday need the same pity if the curse changes her. Her words bring the men to tears. That night, the men guard Mina and Jonathan's room in turns. Sacred protections surround the door and windows. For the first time since the attack, Mina sleeps peacefully. Before dawn, Mina asks Van Helsing to hypnotize her. She believes the blood bond may allow her to sense what Dracula hears. The professor places her in a trance. Mina says everything is dark. She hears water against wood, men moving overhead, and a heavy chain turning around a capstan. She understands that Dracula's box is aboard a ship. Hypnotized means to place someone in a state of focused sleep. Example: Van Helsing hypnotizes Mina. A trance is a sleep-like mental state. Example: Mina hears the sea while in a trance. The Count has taken his final box out of London. He used the money from Piccadilly to arrange his escape before the hunters could trap him. England is no longer safe for him. Van Helsing explains that Dracula must be returning toward Transylvania. A ship can carry the heavy box while the Count sleeps inside it. The hunters now have a new trail to follow. For the moment, the sea separates Dracula from Mina. He cannot easily leave the ship unless it reaches land at the correct state of the tide. The group finally has time to rest and think. Mina asks why they cannot simply let Dracula leave. Van Helsing says the Count may live for centuries, while Mina is mortal. If Dracula remains undead when she dies, the curse may transform her. The hunt, therefore, cannot end with Dracula's escape. They must follow him across Europe and destroy him before Mina's natural life ends. When Mina hears this truth, she becomes pale and faints. Mortal means unable to live forever. Example: Mina is a mortal woman. Transform means to change completely. Example: Dracula's curse may transform Mina. Dracula escapes the hunters and leaves England inside his final box aboard a ship. What sounds does Mina hear while hypnotized? In the next chapter, the group discovers Dracula's destination and plans a journey to Varna. Chapter 24. Van Helsing records a message for Jonathan. He is certain Dracula is sailing back toward his castle in Transylvania. The others leave to discover which ship is carrying the final box. Jonathan stays with Mina and reads her the professor's message. Knowing Dracula has left England gives them a little comfort. Still, the red scar proves that the danger has not ended. The hunters check shipping records and learn that only one vessel recently left for the Black Sea. It is the sailing ship Tsarina Catherine, bound for Varna. They go to the London wharf to question the workers. The workers remember a tall, pale man arriving in a great hurry. Dracula paid generously and brought a single heavy box on a cart. He lifted it with unnatural strength. The Count arranged for the box to be placed aboard the ship. A private fog delayed the departure until he could return and enter unseen. Then the fog cleared and the ship sailed down the Thames. A vessel is a ship or large boat. Example: the Tsarina Catherine is a sailing vessel. A wharf is a place where ships load and unload. Example: the hunters question workers at the wharf. The shipping papers show that the box will be unloaded at Varna and delivered to an agent named Ristix. The hunters now know both Dracula's route and destination. Van Helsing says they can travel overland much faster than the sailing ship. They should reach Varna well before Dracula. Their best chance is to open the box during daylight. Mina asks again whether they must continue the chase. Van Helsing explains that Dracula will never peacefully accept defeat. Like a man-eating tiger, he will return after tasting human blood. Dracula spent centuries preparing to enter modern London. He studied English, laws, business, science, and human behavior. If he survives, he will learn from his mistakes and become even more dangerous. The group must also save Mina. Dracula's blood inside her may transform her after death unless his curse is first destroyed. They agree that following him is necessary for her and for humanity. A destination is the place someone is traveling to. Example: Varna is Dracula's destination. Pursue means to follow someone in order to catch them. Example: the group must pursue Dracula. Seward and Van Helsing notice early changes in Mina. Her teeth seem slightly sharper, her eyes sometimes harder, as she occasionally becomes strangely silent. They fear Dracula can influence her thoughts. The blood bond works in both directions. Mina can hear through Dracula while hypnotized, but he may also learn whatever she knows. The hunters must keep some plans hidden from her. Mina reaches the same conclusion herself. She asks Jonathan to promise not to tell her the group's plans while the scar remains. He agrees, although the promise feels like a closed door between them. Van Helsing calculates that the Tsarina Catherine needs about 3 weeks to reach Varna. The group can cross Europe in only a few days. They choose to travel early and wait near the port. Quincy recommends taking repeating rifles because Dracula's homeland is full of wolves. The others agree to prepare both physical and sacred weapons. Everyone understands that the journey may be fatal. Influence means the power to affect someone's actions. Example: Dracula may influence Mina's thoughts. Fatal means causing death. Example: the journey may be fatal. At dawn, Mina says she must travel with them. If Dracula secretly commands her to come, she could deceive even Jonathan to obey him. She will be safer surrounded by the whole group. Mina may also guide them through hypnosis. At sunrise and sunset, her connection to Dracula can reveal sounds and movements that he cannot willingly share. Van Helsing accepts her reasoning. Their plan is to board the ship at Varna, find the box, and place Wild Rose on it so Dracula cannot escape. Then they will open it and destroy him when he is powerless. Quincy promises he will act even if many witnesses are present. The friends arrange tickets, money, rifles, documents, and protection for the dangerous journey. Jonathan completes his will before leaving. As sunset approaches, Mina becomes uneasy again. The group prepares to leave England together and meet Dracula when his ship reaches Varna. The final pursuit is about to cross Europe. A witness is someone who sees an event. Example: Quincy will act even if witnesses are present. Uneasy means worried or uncomfortable. Example: Mina becomes uneasy near sunset. The hunters identify Dracula's ship and prepare to meet him in Varna, with Mina joining the journey. Why must the group hide some plans from Mina? In the next chapter, the hunters travel across Europe and wait for the Tsarina Catherine to arrive. Chapter 25. Before leaving England, Mina asks the whole group to meet near sunset, when Dracula's control over her is weakest. She says the poison in her blood may eventually make her dangerous. Mina asks each man to promise that if she fully becomes a vampire, they will kill her body and free her soul. Quincy is the first to give his solemn promise. Van Helsing, Arthur, Seward, and finally Jonathan make the same promise. Jonathan is heartbroken, but Mina wants his loving hand to release her if necessary. She warns that the change may happen suddenly. Mina also asks Jonathan to read the funeral service while she is still herself. The friends kneel around her and listen through their tears. The painful ceremony gives them unexpected comfort. On October 12th, the group leaves London, crosses Paris, and takes the Orient Express. They arrive in Varna 3 days later. Mina sleeps through much of the journey. Solemn means serious and sincere. Example: Quincy makes a solemn promise. A ceremony is a formal event with special words or actions. Example: the funeral ceremony comforts the group. At sunrise and sunset, Van Helsing hypnotizes Mina. She hears waves, rushing water, wind in the sails, and creaking masts. The Tsarina Catherine is still crossing the sea. The hunters arrange permission to board the ship immediately when it reaches Varna. They plan to open Dracula's box during daylight. Officials and port workers are paid to send a quick warning. If Dracula is found inside, Van Helsing and Seward will destroy him while the others prevent interference. They accept that the law may punish them, but Mina's soul matters more. A week passes with no ship. A telegram finally reports that the Tsarina Catherine has crossed the Dardanelles. Everyone expects it to arrive at Varna within 1 day. Mina appears healthier, but she sleeps more deeply and is sometimes hard awake. Van Helsing and Seward quietly watch for sharper teeth or other signs of change. They fear Dracula still influences her. Interference is action that prevents something from succeeding. Example: the others will prevent interference. Influence is the power to affect someone. Example: Dracula still influences Mina. The expected day passes, but the ship does not appear. Mina continues to hear water in every hypnotic trance. Fog at sea may have delayed the vessel. More days pass with no news. The waves in Mina's reports become faint, and Van Helsing worries that Dracula has discovered their plan. The hunters remain ready at the port. On October 28th, a telegram finally arrives. The Tsarina Catherine did not sail to Varna at all. It has entered the port of Galatz, far away on the Danube. Dracula used fog and favorable wind to change the ship's course and escape the trap waiting in Varna. The hunters are disappointed, but immediately prepare to move. Mina remembers the railway schedules and tells them the next train to Galatz leaves early the following morning. Her practical knowledge again saves valuable time. A vessel is a ship or large boat. Example: the vessel fails to arrive in Varna. A schedule shows when journeys or events happen. Example: Mina remembers the railway schedule. Arthur buys tickets. Jonathan obtains authority to search the ship, and Quincy contacts officials in Galatz. Seward and Van Helsing remain with Mina and study the records. Van Helsing believes Dracula temporarily weakened his connection with Mina after learning that the hunters were waiting in Varna. The Count thinks she will eventually obey him, so he focuses on escaping. This gives the group a small advantage. Mina's human mind can compare facts and recognize patterns that Dracula's selfish intelligence may miss. They must use that advantage quickly. The group gathers before sunset for one more hypnotic attempt. Mina senses still water, voices, oars, chains, and air entering the box. Dracula is close to land. The hunters board the train from Varna to Galatz. Their carefully prepared trap has failed, but they're following again. The race toward Dracula's castle has entered its final stage. Authority is official permission or power. Example: Jonathan obtains authority to search the ship. A final stage is the last part of a process. Example: the chase enters its final stage. The hunters wait in Varna, but Dracula secretly changes course and reaches Galatz. What promise does Mina ask the men to make? In the next chapter, Mina discovers Dracula's river route, and the hunters divide into 3 teams. Chapter 26. On the train to Galatz, Mina's hypnotic reports become harder to obtain. She hears still water, oars, chains, and then rushing river water. Dracula's box has already been removed from the ship. At Galatz, the hunters question the captain of the Tsarina, Catherine. He says a man named Emanuel Hildesheim collected the box before sunrise. The order had been arranged from England. Hildesheim explains that he passed the box to Petrov Skinsky, a trader connected with Slovak boatmen. When the hunters search for Skinsky, they learn that he has disappeared. Skinsky's body is soon found near a churchyard with his throat torn open. Dracula killed his agent to hide the trail. The box has vanished somewhere along the river system. The exhausted men return to the hotel without a plan. They allow Mina to read all the new records because her clear reasoning may find what they have missed. She studies maps and every available clue. An agent is someone who performs business for another person. Example, Dracula kills his agent. A trail is a series of clues showing where someone went. Example, Skinsky's death hides the trail. Mina concludes that road and rail are too dangerous for Dracula's heavy box. Curious people, customs officers, or delays might expose him. Water is the safest secret route. Her trance included water level with her ears, creaking wood, cattle, and nearby riverbanks. This suggests an open boat moving upstream with oars or poles. Dracula is traveling inland. Mina compares the Pruth and Sereth rivers. The Sereth joins the Bistritza, which curves toward the Borgo Pass and Dracula's castle. She believes that is the Count's chosen route. Van Helsing praises Mina for seeing what the others could not. Dracula must remain inside the box during daylight and cannot hurry without frightening his carriers. The hunters may still overtake him. They divide into 3 teams. Arthur and Jonathan take a fast steam launch up the river. Seward and Quincy ride horses along the bank in case the box comes ashore. Upstream means toward the source of a river. Example, the boat is moving upstream. Overtake means to catch someone traveling ahead. Example, the hunters hope to overtake Dracula. Van Helsing and Mina travel by train to Veresti, then by carriage through the Borgo Pass. They will approach the castle from the landward side. The professor must also destroy the evil remaining there. Jonathan fears sending Mina near the castle, but Van Helsing promises not to take her inside. He says Dracula could hide for a century if they fail. Jonathan finally accepts the dangerous plan. The friends quickly obtain a launch, horses, maps, warm clothing, rifles, and supplies. Within hours, all 3 teams are ready. Mina and Jonathan say goodbye without knowing whether they will meet again. Arthur drives the launch through the dark while Jonathan watches the river. They stop and inspect every boat large enough to carry Dracula's box. The cold becomes more severe as they travel north. Seward and Quincy ride hard along the riverbank, changing horses when necessary. They carry rifles because armed carriers and wolves may stand between them and Dracula. Snow begins falling in the mountains. Landward means toward or from the land. Example, Mina approaches the castle from the landward side. Critical means extremely important or dangerous. Example, the lost time may be critical. The launch reaches the Bistritza, but an accident at the rapids delays Arthur and Jonathan. Local people help repair it, yet the lost time may be critical. They continue until the damaged engine forces another change. Slovak boatmen report that a large boat with a double crew recently passed upstream. The hunters are now close behind Dracula. Every team pushes forward with little rest. Mina and Van Helsing reach Veresti, buy a carriage and several horses, and begin the long drive toward the Borgo Pass. Mina's last trance reveals darkness and roaring water. As they approach Dracula's country, Van Helsing can no longer hypnotize Mina. She sleeps through the day, becomes alert at night, and refuses ordinary food. The professor fears the curse is growing stronger. The three teams continue from different directions, launch in horses along the river, carriage toward the castle. Dracula's carriers are ahead, but the hunters are closing in. The final meeting will happen in the snow-covered Carpathians. Rapids are fast, rough parts of a river. Example: the launch is damaged at the rapids. Converge means to move toward the same place. Example: the three teams converge on the castle. Mina identifies Dracula's river route, and the hunters divide into three teams for the final pursuit. Why does Mina believe Dracula is traveling by water? In the final chapter, the hunters reach the castle and race to destroy Dracula before sunset. Chapter 27. Mina and Van Helsing drive through the Carpathian Mountains, changing horses and traveling day and night. Local people fear the red scar on Mina's forehead. The road becomes colder, wilder, and covered with snow. Near the Borgo Pass, Mina sleeps all day and becomes energetic after sunset. Van Helsing can no longer hypnotize her, and she refuses normal food. He knows Dracula's curse is becoming stronger. When Dracula's castle appears above them, Van Helsing draws a wide circle around Mina with sacred wafer. She cannot cross the line, proving that her body is affected, but the circle also protects her soul. During the night, the three vampire women from the castle form out of the snow and mist. They call Mina their sister and invite her to join them. Mina looks at them with horror, showing that she still resists the curse. The women cannot enter the sacred circle. Van Helsing holds up the wafer, feeds the fire, and remains beside Mina until dawn. By morning, the vampire women vanish, and all four carriage horses are dead. Resist means to fight against a force or command. Example: Mina still resists the curse. A sacred circle is a protected boundary made with a holy object. Example: the vampire women cannot enter the sacred circle. Leaving Mina asleep inside the circle, Van Helsing enters the castle. He follows Jonathan's journal through the ruined passages to the old chapel. There he finds Dracula's empty stone tomb. Van Helsing places sacred wafer inside Dracula's tomb and seals the entrances, preventing the Count from using the castle as an undead refuge. He then finds the three vampire women asleep in their tombs. The professor completes the terrible work required to release each woman from the curse. Their bodies become peaceful and then crumble into dust. The ancient evil inside the castle is ended. Meanwhile, the other hunters abandon the damaged launch and continue on horses. Seward and Quincy see Dracula's gypsy carriers racing toward the castle with a large wagon. Arthur and Jonathan approach from the opposite side. Van Helsing and Mina leave the castle grounds and find shelter among rocks. Through the falling snow, they see mounted gypsies surrounding a wagon with Dracula's box. Sunset is less than an hour away. A refuge is a safe place to hide or rest. Example: the castle can no longer be Dracula's refuge. A carrier is someone who transports something. Example: gypsy carriers move Dracula's box. Seward and Quincy arrive from the south, while Arthur and Jonathan race in from the north. Wolves gather behind them in the snow. All three groups converge around the wagon. The hunters order the gypsies to stop. The carriers draw knives and pistols, but rifles now point at them from every direction. Their leader points toward the setting sun and commands them to continue. Jonathan and Quincy force their way toward the wagon. Jonathan throws the heavy box to the ground with extraordinary strength. Quincy is cut badly in the side, but does not stop. Together, they use their great knives to tear open the lid. Inside, Dracula lies on his native earth, pale and still. As the sun touches the mountain, his red eyes begin to show triumph. Before darkness can free him, Jonathan's knife cuts through Dracula's throat. At the same instant, Quincy's knife enters the vampire's heart. The Count's body immediately begins to crumble. Converge means to come together at one place. Example: the hunters converge around the wagon. Crumble means to break into very small pieces. Example: Dracula's body begins to crumble. Dracula turns completely to dust and disappears. For one final moment, his face shows peace instead of hatred. The gypsies flee, and the wolves follow them away. Quincy falls to the ground, losing blood from his wound. Mina runs to him now that the sacred circle no longer holds her. Jonathan supports his dying friend. Quincy points toward Mina's forehead. The red scar has disappeared, and her skin is clean again. He says that saving her made his sacrifice worthwhile. With a smile, Quincy dies among his friends. Dracula is destroyed, Mina is free, and a long hunt is over. Their victory is joined forever with the loss of a brave companion. 7 years later, Mina and Jonathan have a son born on the anniversary of Quincy's death. They call the boy Quincy in honor of their friend. The survivors return to Transylvania, remember their ordeal, and find peace. The story of Dracula ends. A sacrifice is giving up something valuable for others. Example: Quincy's sacrifice saves Mina. An ordeal is a long and painful experience. Example: the survivors remember their ordeal. The hunters destroy Dracula before sunset. Mina is freed from the curse, and Quincy gives his life for his friends. What happens to the scar on Mina's forehead? This is the End of Dracula by Bram Stoker. Thank you for learning English through this classic story.